Давайте починати. Я всіх вітаю на нашому сьогоднішньому заході.
To start, I would like to welcome everyone in our today's event. I'm Irina Kosa, expert and coordinator of Institute of Economic Research and Policy Consulting. We are going to present the results of our research today, reconstruction and risk, changes in construction policy needed. The team of our institute has been conducting this research for several last months. It was an interesting project, and we met lots of market participants. We have had discussions with them, conducted interviews, and today Alexandra Batli, coordinator of this project, is going to present this research, and I would like to give her the floor.
Я всіх вітаю.
Welcome, everyone.
Ми назвали, в принципі, наш проект, який
Actually, our project,
нам профінансував Transparency International.
It was financed by Transparency International. I'm really grateful to them. Reconstruction and risk, changes in construction policy needed.
Так. В принципі, є роздруковано, але можна подивитися, да. Я прошу включити презентацію.
It's just, I would like to ask a speech on the presentation. Actually, why we decided to try to answer this question. The thing is that according to World Bank assessment, Ukraine needs 500 billion euros and for recovery, and we all know this, and this number is articulated by everyone all the time, and more often than not we are talking about where to get such funds from. With partners, we are now having the project, the control on recovery expenses, and our granteers actually monitoring recovery process. And I have a different question now, whether we have someone to recover, because we have problems in the sectors that have to be corrected. So the question that we asked was whether construction sector is needed to reconstruction, whether we need to change something, whether we need to change some regulations, and we tried to answer such questions. I would like to immediately tell that the research is pretty wide, and to answer all the questions, to tackle all the questions of construction in one research is not realistic, and the target audience is pretty widespread. That's how we defined it, because those people who working in sector or with sectors, they already know about such problems, and we economists looking for funds for reconstruction and recovery, or we advocate about principles of work in some sectors, we do not fully understand that. So I wanted to try for myself and for organizations as our organization to answer these questions, but also to give this opinion to international partners who are now looking for opportunities to finance our recovery, and recovery is financed with the help of external funds first and foremost. And also for our deputies, we needed to explain why changes are needed, and generally for wider active audience and local governmental bodies. So that's why certain conclusions at the beginning, but general and philosophical. Construction, this is ecosystem that has to be understood, because reality is very often different from what is written on the paper. There are lots of, unfortunately the sound is very bad, it's not proper for interpretation, lots of noise.
Я почала згадувати, колись ми займалися реформою охорони здоров'я, і коли от її міняти, да, тобто ви наступаєте постійно на чиїсь інтерес. От в будівництві так само. Десь ви хочете поміняти покраще,
if you want to change something, if you want to improve something, you will step on someone else's interest and you will be hit. And to figure it out is pretty difficult, but at the same time, something is wrong today with the presentation, even though I managed to work with this earlier. But now it is important that the construction equals recovery and development. So it's not only construction as such. What we heard and why our research is different from others, because it is built on that fact that we looked at the legislation, we looked at everything that is written, but we also had discussions with market, and we heard a lot. For example, this opinion that I am now being approached by entrepreneurs who would like to relocate from Sumy region, and I say no to everyone because I do not have capacity and opportunity to build something because I do not have enough people. That's actually about today's resilience, economic resilience. And construction sector actually influences investments because if I cannot build new enterprise, I will not come with my investments, whatever is the climate. It is about relocation, so about resilience and stability of the market. So, but at the same time, one of the engineers wrote this. It was pretty interesting work for everyone who would like to get familiar with this. It is comparison of planning and real construction. So everything is planned great, but very often, more often than not, it goes awry later. Why I recommend reading this? Because when I was discussing it with Sergei, I asked him just to have a technical note, and he mentioned here everything that is painful for him. And that was interesting aspect for me as well, because this is actually what the person is facing with when the person is an engineer and consultant and projector, and he has lots of acquaintance in the sector, and he writes a lot about how everything is really working. Of course, it is a little bit prejudiced point of view because we're talking about one player, but maybe someone will describe here a situation in a different way. But practically what I was talking about, there are lots of players on the market, or stakeholders as we usually call them. Stakeholders in English sounds more neutral than in Ukrainian, because in Ukrainian we say interested people, but actually that's how we translate stakeholders. But yes, I was talking about stakeholders, and the main policy is done by the Ministry of Development, Cabinet of Ministers, working with decrees, very important role of bodies of local self-governments, because it is permissions, working with lands, with lots, a new body as ACM, then Agency of Development, State Audit Services, control of public procurement, because we sometimes have problems here as well, and so on and so forth. So there are lots of professional players, professional actors, once again, sometimes with different interests. If we talk about market, then in general, several numbers, dynamic development of the sector started after 2016 during the COVID. The sector was of construction was supported by the project big construction. The construction of building was not very high at that moment, but sector was growing, certain sectors. In 2022, sector damaged significantly because of the war. We lost territories. There were not so many investments because, once again, huge uncertainty. Sector started its recovery in 2023, 2024. It was significant recovery, but once again, it's different structure of the sector. So we are talking about the fact that now recovery is growing, fortifications and other components of construction that we have never actually had before, even though building construction is growing as well. What about sector-wise? We very often says that builders, it's not qualified labor force. No, sector of construction is most of all qualified labor force. Why I'm talking about that? Because to recover, we need, and to reconstruct, we need to have lots of qualified labor force. We are not saying that, well, immediately everyone can become engineers and architects. These are skills that have to be developed for many years. Not so many people can do that. So that's why it's qualified labor force. This here we have a big connection with education, especially education for adults, especially when we're talking about veterans who are going to come back. Some of them might be involved in this sector, but we already need to develop the program of their education. It is adult education, and once again, it is recognizing qualification that we are talking about within Euro integration. So several slides concerning the stages of construction, but taking into account what sector is talking about. So we will have some quotations here. You might agree with them, you might disagree with them. Once again, that's because we are very different and we have different interests. Today, due to deregulation, it's very very easy to open the company, to open an account and everything else. To licensing, we do not have licensing now, and there is a declarative principle. But what is interesting, companies were telling us that it's a disadvantage. Why it is a disadvantage? Because it brings uncertainty. And at the end, as a result, on market, we now have a buying and selling of companies that have licenses for construction. The price has grown significantly during full-scale invasion, just because the license cannot be obtained right now. now,
недоліку.
and that's why
І говорить
it
про те,
is
що
called as
ліцензування
a
має бути.
disadvantage. It is
Хто
named as a
має видавати
disadvantage by the market,
ліцензію
and they
ще
say
щось?
that
Тобто
licensing should
ми,
be there.
тобто
Who
це
should issue this
складно комусь
license or
сказати,
something
всі
like that?
хочуть, щоб
Well,
там
it's
не було
difficult
корупції, але як
to
це
say.
зробити,
Everyone wants
мало
not
хто
to
може
have corruption
сказати,
there, but
але
not so
знову ж
many
таки
people can
ключове,
tell
що
how to
всі
do it without
воліють,
the
щоб
corruption. But the
ліцензії
most
було
important thing
відновлено.
that everyone wants to have
Але
licenses back.
фактично, в принципі,
But
проблеми починаються,
actually, the
знову ж таки,
problems
коли
start
починають
once
компанії
again
працювати.
when
Те, що я
companies
вже
start
говорила,
working.
дефіцит
What I have
кадрів
already
сьогодні
mentioned, we
найбільша
have lack
проблема.
of
Це ми чули від усіх
employees. It is
компаній,
the
з
biggest
якими ми
problem. We have
говорили,
heard it
незалежно від
from
того, в
many
якому
companies, all the
сегменті
companies we were
ринку
talking
будівництва,
with,
сферу
and it
будівництва
doesn't
вони
matter which
займаються.
sector of the sphere of construction
При
they are dealing
цьому
with.
професія,
At the same
наприклад,
time, the
архітектора та
profession, for
інженера,
example,
те,
of
що нам говорили
architect
по кадрам,
and
вони
the engineer
недооцінені, зарплата
are
низькі, відповідальність дуже
underappreciated.
висока.
Salaries are
В
very
результаті
low, but
кількість
responsibility is
архітекторів
very
вища,
high. As a
наприклад, а
result,
кількість
we have many
сертифікованих архітекторів
architects,
набагато нижча,
but
тому що
not so many
відповідальність суттєва.
certified
А
architects
при
because the
цьому
responsibility is very
страхування
high. At the same
відповідальності
time,
інженерів і
insurance of
архітекторів не дуже
responsibility for
розвинута. Тобто, в
engineers and
принципі, є
architects
треба
is not very
страхуватися,
developed.
виплат по цьому виду страхування
So
особливо
there
немає,
they
тому що
have
не
to be insured,
напрацьовані
but there are no
теж механізми, і
mechanisms
тут
for
є
that,
проблема.
and we have a problem here as well.
Тому
That's
навіть
why
якщо ми
even
говоримо
if we are talking
відповідальність
about
страхування, знову ж таки, треба
responsibility and
механізми
insurance,
виплат, треба
once again, we
зрозуміти, а
have
хто з такої
mechanisms of
компанії
paying
має
out. We need to
відповідати
understand
за
who
те, щоб
in
встановити
insurance
таку
company should be
відповідальність, тому що
responsible for
або хто має це
imposing
зробити.
this responsibility,
В
who should be
багатьох
working with
країнах
that.
я
In
дивилася,
many
що це,
countries,
наприклад,
as I
можуть
have
робити самоврядні
looked,
організації.
it can
Знову
be
ж
done
таки,
by
питання до наших
self-government
самоврядних
organization. Once again,
організацій
this
є.
is a question to our organizations.
Система сертифікатів,
The
вона
system of
не завжди є
certificates
прозорою,
is not
і
always transparent.
якраз якщо ми
And
говоримо по
actually, if
архітекторах,
to talk
у
about
нас була зміна,
architects, we
самоврядна
had
організація
certain
видавала
changes.
сертифікати, зараз
Organization
міністерство
was
фактично за
issuing
це
certificates. Now
відповідає,
ministry is
змінилося
responsible
питання,
for
як
this.
будується.
They
Одне з
changed
пояснень, яке
this
ми почули,
matter.
що
One of the
міністерство не
explanations that
було,
we have heard that
задоволене,
ministry
напевно, тим,
was
що
not satisfied
тільки в
probably with
Києві
that fact that
навчання,
only in
тільки
Kyiv the training was only
централізовано,
possible in Kyiv, only
самоврядна
centralized.
організація не забирає
This
сертифікати, якщо там є порушення і
government
так далі.
organization was not
Знову
taking
ж таки,
away
тут питання в тому,
certificates if there
чи
were some
можна це було
violations or
визначити
something like
інакше.
that. So
Наприклад,
there
якщо ми
was a question
говоримо
whether
про
it could have been
корпоративне
defined in any
управління,
other way.
в
If you're
уряду
talking
є,
about corporate governance,
скажімо так,
then
політика
the
власності, да?
government stays
Тут так
so-called
само
ownership
міністерство,
policy. So
наприклад,
the same
визначає,
here.
що
Ministry,
саме
for
і як
example,
саме
can
мають
define what
видаватися
exactly
навчання, яким чином
should be
видаваються
done, how
сертифікати, забиратися
certificates can be
сертифікати,
issued,
ще
how
щось. Тут
certificates should be
це
taken
якраз
away, and so
позиція,
on
там,
and
де
so
треба,
forth. So
мені
it is this
здається,
position when it
проговорювати,
seems to
тому
me we need
що
to
виникає
discuss
конфлікт,
all of
який не
this because some
вирішується,
conflicts
і
might
це
appear
шкодить нашому
and
ринку
it is not
будівництва, тому що
resolved and
немає
it
діалогу.
hinders
Коли ми
construction
говоримо про
market because there is
інженерів,
no dialogue.
тут
When
що
we talk
цікаво,
about
тут якраз
engineers,
нам жалілися
here it's also
компанії
interesting
частково,
because
що їм не
companies complained to
подобається,
us
тобто
that partially that they do
існує ця
not
сертифікація,
like this
що навчання не
certification,
тому, що треба,
that
міжнародні
training
курси не
is not
визнаються,
proper, international
вебінари
courses are not
послухав, потім просто
recognized. Someone
отримав свій сертифікат
listens
або
some kind
фактично
of
заплатив
webinar,
за нього
gets the
гроші, хоча
certificate or
навчання не
pays money
проходив.
for the certificate
Але
without
водночас
even
гільдії не забирають
having
там,
at
наприклад, ці
certain education,
повноваження,
but
так
guilds do
делеговані
not take
повноваження від
away such
міністерства, і тому знову ж таки
responsibilities,
тут
so
треба якась
authorizations. So that's why
політика, тобто
we
більш
need to
чіткіше,
have some
чому там так,
more
чому тут
specific
так.
policy.
Ми
Why
дивилися
here it is like
європейський
that, why
досвід,
there it is
дуже
like that. We
різний.
were
Тобто
looking at
десь
European
самоврядні
experience, it's
організації
very
видають
different.
сертифікати,
Somewhere
десь це
it's
централізовано робиться.
self-governing
Знову ж таки,
organization,
немає
somewhere
єдиної
it is
рамки,
done
про
in
яку ми
central way.
можемо
Once
говорити.
again, there is no
Точно
single
отак
framework we
вона
can
має
talk about
працювати.
here, that it
Нам
has
треба
to work like
розбиратися, але
this.
знову ж таки,
We need to deal with it
іноді в деяких
separately, but
моментах
in
взагалі в
certain
Україні і в
cases
цій
in
сфері теж
Ukraine and in
бракує
this
цього
sphere in
діалогу,
particular, I lack
який,
this
мені
dialogue,
здається, що дуже
and
потрібен.
it seems to
Коли
me
ми
that it is
говоримо про
extremely
дозвільні
needed. If we are
документи,
talking about permission documents,
як ми почули від кількох
as we have heard from several participants of interviews and focus groups, that
умови і обмеження бачаться як
urban
корупційний
development
сигнал.
conditions and
І тут
restrictions,
є
it's
питання, знову ж таки,
like
тому що бувають проблеми на місцях.
something that
Не
prevents
всі
corruption, because, but there
органи
are
місцевого
problems on the places.
самоврядування
Not bodies
погані,
of
але
local
є проблеми з
self-governments
оцими
governance are
дозволами.
bad, but there are
Те, що, наприклад,
problems
я не
with
знала
such
раніше, але
permissions.
те, що
What
я
I
почула,
have
тобто
not
технічні умови, дуже складно,
heard
в принципі,
about
його отримати,
technical
і тут ми
conditions. It's very
говоримо не про
difficult to get
місцеве
that. And here we're not
самоврядування, про
talking
комунальні
about local
компанії.
self-government, but
Те,
about
що
utility companies.
приєднатися до електромереж
To
дуже дорого,
join,
це я
it's
знаю.
very
Бо це ми
difficult
колись
and
займалися, в
very
результаті для мене
expensive
це не
to
диво, це дорого, і це складно.
to
Те,
actually
щоб
connect to
приєднатися,
networks networks, I know this. To work with sewage system, that is very difficult to get this permission. For me, it was a surprise because I have never heard that, I have never thought that it's such a big problem. In particular, there are some problems with sewage. It's huge because, for example, big cities, they were not built for such a big construction, such a big development, and we need to take this into account, that we need to spread, we need to widen our networks, our infrastructure. When we are talking about expertise, it is one of the stages the project is going through. then expertise is very often called just artificial. Certain changes have to be implemented there. So those who were in the sector for a very long time, they mentioned that expertise used to show our mistakes. Now I can see my mistakes on my own, but expertise will never show it to me. Or expertise is actually I pay money and no one is looking at my documents, and as a result I just pay money to go through the next stages and no one wants to look at our problems. When we are talking about such stage that is called public procurements, then the problem for the state is there are not so many companies that would like to participate in public procurements, and it's a huge problem. We were trying to understand the reasons, because we have heard some of the reasons, but we have not heard about others. What we have heard that, for example, this phrase that we have so many objects of public procurements and so many open cases for them. So we haven't started the building yet, but we already got visit from certain bodies to take the documents that were not even sent for us by local governmental bodies. So the different changes and so on and so forth, but then police visit them and some other bodies, and as a result, people that are working with commercial sectors, they do not really want to get to public procurements because of that. I remember that at the beginning, when our grantees were having this monitoring of reconstructions, and were writing once again, public procurements got won by the company that has criminal case opened, and the one told me that it's absolutely okay. Excuse me for that, but it means that it's just not closed criminal cases, they are open, and when we were looking at them, in majority of companies have such criminal cases. If these are private entrepreneurs, it's easier. We see private entrepreneurs close its activity, then in half a year they opened again, and they are dealing with the same thing, but the criminal case is considered for some other entrepreneur, not this one. And here we have some questions, because we, once again, just recently I have been talking a lot that we need the reform of law enforcement bodies, and here we see it once again. Without a change of law enforcement bodies reform, we will have no construction, we will have no investment climate. One more problem with public procurement is that it is post payments, there are no advance payments, and all these signings of tasks. If there are no funds in budget, they will be signing it for a very long time. Some companies have debts, and during that time salaries grow, materials expenses grow, and as a result companies pay their own money. Some companies were saying that they go to public procurements, then it's easier for them to deal with their commercial building projects. So it is indirect incentive. One more incentive they have that has just recently appeared, it's for taking the sector out of the shadow and for more companies to take part in public procurements, the opportunity to exempt employees from mobilization, in particular getting the status of critical enterprise. So certain companies, certain enterprises that take part in public procurements from local governmental bodies, they get the status of critical enterprise, and they can exempt more employees, and this exemption has the opportunity to exempt more employees, because sector is in shadow, and one of the reasons why they're working in shadow, that's once again pricing partially, and I'm really grateful for Natalia that now we have the working group created, and now we have the dialogue that it has to be changed. Why? Because what we have been told that today the state of the sector is not according to the market condition, even though it in guidance, it is a guideline, it is written that the salary should be average, but everyone says that this we can prove in the in our expenses list, but if we have market salary, we cannot do this. If you have not market salary, then it might bring you to have to increase the expenses for materials, or they write more materials and so on and so forth, but salary still has to be paid. And as a result, there are various schemes how to transfer that money into cash, because then it will be salary in cash without paying out taxes, and the same bodies of local self-government, they lose money from taxes because salary is not official. But at the same time, we were talking about bodies of local self-government that decided that in their expenses list they only have this average salary and they do not even accept any other. As a result, we have such creative creation of tax-paying. And the other problem that we were talking about, that companies very often work with is not with dynamic price, in particular, not timely payment leads to the fact that materials are bought with more expensive price. We have risks, we have the war going on. And one of the reasons, by the way, of prolonging is that we lack labor force, because it's very easy for everyone to come to, it's very easy for completion centers to come to building lots and to attack lots of people. Construction centers take the builders in several minutes, and that's it. The completion center, they take them to serve into the army, they go there and they do this. So it's a prolongation, and certain changes have to be included in agreements. And this change in pricing could be about various spheres. And I'm really grateful that now we are talking about changes about pricing, because it might be possible for many spheres of construction. Technical monitoring, they say that it's sometimes very formal, and the quality of control is once again low. So as a result, what we have project of expertise. Expertise is artificial. We have technical monitoring is artificial. So there are no licenses. No one is checking whether the company really has the skills, expertise, and so on and so forth. We increase the risks in the sphere of construction at every stage. Unfortunately, we have lots of additional noise. Interpretation is impossible.
Але далі є інші проблеми, наприклад, те, що нам говорили, наприклад, ДСНС має право повторної ніби експертизи, вони приходять, дивляться і говорять, це там цитата, який дурник вам це проектував.
So, as a result, at this particular stage, we have the problem. You see it and you think what to do with it. If it is already built, everything is according to the project, but the authorities do not agree with this. We have yet another problem. When objects are not commissioned because no one wants to write it, no one wants to take the responsibility for this, if it's school or if it's a kinder, if it's a hospital. But another problem that there is no capacity to do that, and that's why very often we see in the project that our grantees were monitoring, it is done first then officially open some kind of facility, for example, underground schools, with the participation of someone from our politicians, and as a result, they very soon commission it, because they already start working, even though the work is not fully done. We were talking also about that fact, whether foreigners can enter the market. Once again, point of view of our business, what we have already seen and what we have talked about today, that companies, they can easily create companies, but they do not really understand the rules. So our companies say that they see some kind of joint enterprises, rather, when our expertise is used, our skills are used. At the same time, our companies have certain concerns that foreign business will come to work with big funds, but they will probably have bigger access than we do. They will be using our labor force, and they will be able to pay bigger salaries. They're also talking about that fact that equipment can be used, the same one that is on the market, because and that's why there will be more competition, but our companies will not be able to deal with that. Once again, because for our companies, the access to financing is more expensive. But they see here benefits for architects and for engineers, because they will be able to bring us better standards. As a result of all of this, we will have it in a more detailed way. But once again, pricing, these are directions for changes. I was not talking about digitalization today, but we have digitalization in a very important sphere, and it adds transparency. And we have information about that in the report. We still have some drawbacks, but we need financing for all of this. But digitalization might help to have transparency of the market. Public procurements, once again, changes are needed here, but it has to be discussed. It is not within the general law, but it is within payment, whether we need to have some acts, whether we need to move to some other standards of payment. This is a question. About professionals, once again, it seems to me that first of all, we need to review the programs on the level of professional education. There is this new law about professional education, where it's presupposed better conditions for dual education, better conditions for adult education. That's what we need to do. And approach to certification, they have to be changed as well. If we certify, then let's check whether they really have expertise and skills and not just buy such certificates. It is really important because we are moving towards the European Union. Euro integration is now getting more and more value and matter. So with Euro integration, if you're talking about sector of construction, we probably need to have such a separate roadmap for us to understand what we do and when we do. It will be very important for foreigners to understand when we are going to have Euro codes, when we are going to have dynamic price, when we might have recognition of qualification. Because on Euro integration, we have to have open market for labor force from the EU. If our companies see here advantage in engineers and architects, then we immediately have to pass professional standards in all the categories that will be harmonized with all the other professional standards within EU qualification standards, and it will let them come here and work here. The capacities of communities, it is still big matter because they have to build, they have to issue permissions, they have to do all of that. But unfortunately, even now, that what we used to have, that there are no updated master plans, but we still postpone something, but we really need it because otherwise all the permissions are given manually and it's not good. And this is the version for report for the discussion. After today's event, we would like to introduce some changes here, and later it will be available in both English and Ukrainian languages, so that we can keep on discussing it. And that's it from my side. I would like to give the floor back to Ira. Thank you. Maybe someone was not able to scan this QR code, get back the slide. Thank you, Alexandra, for this very insightful presentation. It was extremely fascinating. Let's discuss it. And now I would like to invite here our today's speaker, please, Natalia Kozlovska, Deputy Minister for Community and Territorial Development of Ukraine, Olena Shulyak, Member of Parliament, Chair of the Committee on State Governments, Local Self-Government, Regional Development and Urban Planning, Max Ivashchenko, Head of Construction Management, CDM Company, and Alexander Chervak, CEO, Confederation of Builders of Ukraine. Thank you for agreeing to come to us here today. And of course, no, it does not want, but we still would invite Ivan Lakhtionov, Deputy Executive Director for Innovative Project Implementation, TI Ukraine. And it is my fault. At the beginning, I forgot to express my gratitude to the donor who actually issued grant for this research, TI Ukraine. Thanks a lot. And once again, thank you. Thank you for this presentation. It was interesting and educational. And now I would like to ask immediately Natalia Kozlovska. Natalia, hello. Could you please tell us about your vision of what Alexandra has just presented? And Alexandra has already mentioned plans for Ministry of Development, about regulation of construction sector, changes in pricing, when we can expect them, what is being discussed now, what direction the sector is going to move into. Thank you for this question, and I would like to express my gratitude for this research. I would like to say that majority of things mentioned here, highlighted here, are known for us. They are not news for us, and we understand that as of now, when we in 2021 or in 2020, even at the end of 2021, when we were talking about how we see the development of the sphere of construction in that period, then it was completely different from what we are talking about now, about the development of a construction sphere, taking into account what we see behind our windows. And definitely, we do have two components here. The first one is about tools that have to be used for recovery. And second one, these are tools that might be relevant to development in that the fact that we need to forecast something, and that also recovery of those populated areas where everything is more or less stable. So I divided this construction into two parts, and I definitely can talk about that fact that we from our side as ministry, what we can do in the government, but we do understand that majority of problems that we are talking about as of now, they are included in legislation field, and we definitely need to have certain changes in legislation here. I would like to reflect a little bit on the presentation, and then in more details I will be telling about that work that we are doing in pricing, because it seems to me that as of now, taking into account that we are all dealing with transparency of public funds, it requires attention, and I would like to focus more on it in more details. First of all, that was the question concerning the quality of work of responsible implementers. I would like to immediately mention that about the work of the same organization, which responsibilities were given to ministry. It was National Architects Society, and the main trigger to giving authority back to the ministry was that unfortunately community decided that these are their own responsibilities, and they were not reflecting to that fact that these were delegated it was delegated authority. That the first thing, but it was not the most terrible thing. It could have been corrected, but after some period of time they started issuing certificates to architects, not like issuing new certificates, but analyzing the systems in the system certificates which were not working. I mean, certificates of those architects that were living in Crimea. You know that the system has been working for long already. That they were correct. They just corrected information of Crimean architects, and just it looked like if they were issuing new certificates. So as of now, there is a criminal case. The law enforcement bodies are dealing with this, and as of now, with this organization, we have such components. So I would not combine here the matter of regulation. Here it's a matter of integrity. I would put it like that in this context. But at the same time, we clearly understand that as of now, these responsibilities are on higher educational institutions. This is being issued by Kyiv, Lviv, and Kharkiv educational institutions, and 3 higher educational institutions are dealing with such matters for architects. In our function of our ministry is just controlling in this context, and it is shown in our experience. Higher educational institutions are absolutely okay with this task, and as of now, we see that it does not only have positive experience, that it is all decentralized, but it means that higher education institutions can form on their areas quality architectural schools, and it is really great when they can teach specialists of different degrees, bachelor degrees and master degrees, and then later they can improve qualification of the specialists from the market, because it means that actually in one platform we can look at the evolution of the profession as such, from the beginning of understanding what is needed from one side, and from the other side we can take a look of how it's working on the market. That's why we have this experience for almost 1.5 years. It is done by educational institutions, and as of now, absolutely, everything is absolutely clear. Concerning other directions, we also have plans to decentralize this matter, but as of now, even decentralized situation requires quality assessment, quality analysis of the whole process. So how it is increase of qualification. And here we have a problem because we, as ministry, we have this opportunity to take away the license only in two cases. The first case, it's actually when there is a court decision, and the other one, it is information of organ of body of architectural control. It's when they see certain disadvantages, certain drawbacks, and the blame of some person, and reflects accordingly. Unfortunately, as of now, state inspection of architecture and construction does not work properly. We have absolutely no reasons to take away the certificate of any kind of responsible implementer of work, and it's a problem because as of now they are concentrated only on service function, but the function of control, unfortunately, is not focused, and we see big disadvantage here. So that's what I would like to mention. Concerning matter of urban development conditions and restrictions, here we have certain ideas about changes of regulation in this direction, but once again we are facing with that fact that it is only defined on the level of the law, and to change it in the future we need to have according changes in the legislation. And as of now we are expecting, let's say, to have this understanding that it is possible to implement, because really I agree, I'm not going to repeat this statement that was mentioned during the presentation, not to advertise it, but I absolutely agree with that fact that in certain bodies of local self-government this component is a problem, and such problems, unfortunately, if we clearly understand that minimized corruption component on the stage of issuing permission documents changed to the stage of urban development conditions and restrictions, and it's a problem. And substitute of matters, even why this document is needed, has to be there. And it seems to me that it seems to us that it's not acceptable. If to talk about the quality of using public funds, that what we are in active regulation right now, then here we are in collaboration with the State Audit Service, and as of now, together with us, they are conducting certain work on changing approaches. So what's the problem? There are lots of problems. The main problem in pricing and in construction, there are lots of problems. But the first, the first component, it's level of income. The second component, it's about advance payments, and the third main component, it is price of construction materials. And the fourth, in our opinion, main component, these are matters connected with level of salaries. And I will talk in a nutshell about each of them to explain the logic, how we for ourselves see changes. First of all, it will be the main changes in reform of pricing. As of now, we have two regulations, the general construction, well, civil construction and construction of highways. In the construction of highways, there were certain changes introduced concerning the regulation for some period of time, and they, in our opinion, have both advantages and disadvantages. What advantages? Level of income, this is clear. The attempt to have price base, but at the same time, it does not solve the matter of advance payment and salary. And this approach, in our opinion, can bring to the fact that we will have certain disbalance of what is being implemented by subcontractors in the process of construction. Concerning the level of salaries, you know that we conducted big work with union of builders and construction materials. We were trying to reach compromise with them concerning how to regulate the level of salary of a worker of the first level that is included in expenses part of each document. We have reached certain compromise already with unions and with employers, and actually we increased the level of salaries for such workers, and as of now it's more than 20,000. So if to talk about average level, what you have mentioned, Alexandra. As of now, we are offering as a mandatory norm to presuppose that in project documentation we need to have this minimum level of salary, but it's not only this. As we saw, not always this minimum level of salary is in fact like this. And if, for instance, for certain objects, certain facilities, we have, for example, 50,000 salary, it's pretty good. It does not necessarily mean that they pay it out. They can pay out minimum salaries, but the everything else goes to income, unfortunately, and not income of the state. That's why, as of now, we are talking about the fact that we will have minimum level of salary according to the agreement signed with the trade unions, but we are saying that regardless of the form of the agreement, whether it's a solid or dynamic, it has to be definitely paid out. If it's not paid out, then it has to be returned. Is that clear? The second component that is extremely important, the matter of advance payment. We understand that in majority of cases, subcontractors and clients justify, let me choose the correct word, play, let's say, game with the price of construction materials because they are limited some approaches on advance payments, and that's why for example, for those facilities where the component of equipment or some work that needs to be commissioned, they cannot fit into that financing volume that is now presupposed by the legislation. It's 30% with certain limitations. So that's why they have for a limited period of time to use their resources and so on and so forth. And accordingly, it has its own risks in administrative expenses. So that's, as of now, we would like to offer to change approach to financing and to have a single regulation, because as of now in Ministry in Finances, it's regulated by two different provisions, and there are different approaches. So advance payments should be defined by the client. It cannot be more than 70%, and that's why we will have the change of regulation and proof of financing. About the level of income, we do believe here that the client, taking into account that, for example, a rate of the National Bank 15.5 or what it is right now, for them to actually understand why they go to construction and not to governmental bonds, this level of expenses of income has to be understood. Unfortunately, we have no proper sound. But at the same time, it cannot be bigger than 10%, and administrative expenses no more than 2%. As of today, we are now in such a discussion. Why 2%? Because we saw that, in fact, the whole range of administrative expenses is presupposed, and it is mentioned, but they are not always proved. And that's why we understand that in certain cases, not proved expenses also go to income. So we believe that income on this part is not acceptable. And the most important thing that everyone worries about it is the cost of construction materials. And here we are on the stage of so-called, we have lots of work ahead of us. I would like to express my gratitude to the team helping. It is the team of the Office of Eastern Europe, former team of DTA that are have been working for us on the urban development cadastre since 2019, and the whole transparent system of construction in Ukraine is working on its basis. And actually the system of pricing, it is also their work together with us, jointly with us, and I would like to express my gratitude here, because our main task is to have working product, transparent product, so that market can work with this, and so that the state have understanding that it works in a proper quality way, and each donor that invests dollar or euro in Ukraine needs to understand that this dollar or euro is used as it should be, and it's used in a transparent and proper way. So we are talking here about the price of construction materials. We have analyzed that as of now in Ukraine we have three classificator, let's call it like that, that in certain way presuppose certain list of construction materials. There is the system that tax office is working on. There is the system customs office is working on, and accordingly there are certain developments in Prozoro. And we understand that all of them are not combined, and their classification, we cannot define the price of one unit of the one unit as it is presupposed in regulation 305 on names and regulation of certain goods. So we understand that it cannot be done on the basis of this information. We, for ourselves, have decided that without agreeing in Ukraine understandable one codifier for construction materials that will be used by absolutely all the stakeholders, we will not see any kind of movement at all if to talk about construction material, taking into account that we have been working pretty actively on implementing regulation 305, and I would like to mention that starting from the 1st of January in Ukraine, it's mandatory, and all producers of construction materials will declare their products within this regulation. We understood for us that it will be the basis, the foundation, and accordingly, as of now, we have finalized development of codifier construction materials. At the first stage, it will be main construction materials, and in the second stage, additional construction materials. But for ourselves, we clearly understand that if to talk about pricing, we need to have clear understanding. And now the main problem, because you know that recently there were attempts to have this register of the price of construction materials. As we saw, it can also lead to certain manipulation. So we understood for ourselves that the source cannot be used as one source, and we need to have the wide range of filling in database from information from various sources. And as of now, we have been conducting negotiations with Prozoro, with producers of construction materials, with distributors that are the main producers of construction materials to fill in this database. At the beginning, we had certain misunderstanding that is a commercial secret, but as of now, we managed to find correct words for this secret not to be such a secret. Let's put it like that. And we have already clear understanding that we will find common ground, and producers and distributors will fill out this database of prices. We already have certain agreements with Prozoro that they will be giving us this information from Prozoro, and at the next stage we'll be aligning with tax office and with custom services. So that's how in our price database we'll have average price for one category of construction products, because we analyzed, for example, as of now, what are the components of bricks. If to look at their modification, then the price of one unit of product, the difference from 7 to 48 hryvnias. That's why here classificator and price of one unit according to certain category is extremely important and will be influencing what it will be influencing all the documents and the expenses. At the same time, as of now, we have the discussion concerning who should analyze all of this, whether client should do that or a subcontractor, or maybe it should be done by some expertise. Because, Alexandra, in your research, you have absolute understanding problems with expertise. We have it as well. Unfortunately, according to legislation, we have no other tools to influence the expertise. expertise, and we do hope that our last initiatives will let us have certain instruments of analyzing the work of expertise, and it will let us interfere this story a little bit and to look at the quality of this work, and in its turn it should also be reflected in legislation framework, because on the level of the government decision we can try out certain tools, but at the same time for it to work in a quality way we understand perfectly well that it has to be implemented. Apart from that, we also have certain vision of concerning your presentation licensing, because we have also certain requests from the market that we need to implement digital product of licensing, because what we have right now, it is not applicable, and we understand this desire of clients to engage companies that have proved experience, and we understand that this proved experience of capacity can be defined only on the stage of licensing, but we also understand that with such administrative service, because I believe that it is administrative service, we need to minimize any kind of corruption risk. So that's why we need to form such conditions, such requirements for licensing that will let do this automatically, and at the same time it will minimize at the stage of licensing any kind of corruption component that can also be in this sphere. At the same time, as you already know, admin services working in the sphere of production, they work on the basis of a single electronic system in the sphere of construction. As of now, we already have certain financing for this in the budget for the next year, but this financing requires only maintaining of the system in this condition. As of now, we have lots of ideas about changes, its licensing and its quality implementation of Regulation 305 in the future. As you already know, in the European Union, we have new regulation already, and in the future, we will need to integrate it on the territory of Ukraine, and the system will require this. It is the system of pricing. It has to be implemented. If to talk about our cooperation with our partner, DIA, it is also this direction that requires attention, because it simplifies significantly getting such documents and so on and so forth. So everything that is presupposed in your research is in plans of our work, but at the same time, all these plans require, as you have mentioned, financial support, and we definitely need to go to and to reach out to all the partners that have this desire to make this reconstruction transparent and and of high quality, so that they can support us not only in institutional capacity, but also in developing digital tools. And it will definitely influence the quality of reconstruction. Thank you, Natalia. And short blitz question that I plan to ask all the participants. In your opinion, could you please mention whether our companies is ready for big reconstruction? As of now, we see big decrease of quality, and it is about several components. The first component is that if to talk about recovery today, right here and right now, then we are talking about timelines. Short timeline is not always, it's never about quality. That's the first thing. We understand that the matter of mobilization and migration also influence the market, because as you know, we, through single construction system, and understand activities of absolutely all performers that are on the territory of Ukraine. And as of now, we see decrease of activity of those people who have certificates, for example. And we understand that these certificates are not taking part in permission documents. So we understand that such performers, such such implementers are not working anymore, and most probably they are either in armed forces or they left the country if they are not working on the territory of Ukraine. So that's why in this context we really see a decrease of quantity, and this quantity influences quality. So that's why we all need to keep on working not only on quality administrative services and regulation, but at the same time we need to work on increasing qualification of existing specialists so that this quality is on that level that is meant when we're talking about reconstruction. Because we are talking about reconstruction, we do not only need to cover the gaps, but in certain cases we need to form absolutely different philosophy, and this philosophy requires different knowledge. Thank you. Thank you, Olana. I wanted to ask you about current situation with licenses, construction licenses, urban development, what is happening right now, and what has to be changed so that when foreign companies enter our market, for them not to be afraid. First and foremost, I would like to welcome dear colleagues here and to express my gratitude to the organizers for this discussion. Finally, about the problem of construction industry, we talk in a deeper mode, and I think that layer by layer we will still talk about this because we have lots of work ahead of us, and as Alexandra has already mentioned, we have huge reconstruction, huge recovery ahead of us. We need to be ready for I have a small presentation with me. I will talk in a nutshell. If to talk about construction market and what might prevent various companies working on construction market, I would like to ask this question: why? I have already showed you all the secrets. What should I click here? Let's start from the very first question, why IKEA hasn't entered Ukraine. This company, I think that if we have some kind of research, then probably half of the problems will be described and solved already on the case of this company. Company had three big entries to our country. The first entry was in 2025, the second in 2027, 2007, 2008, and in 2018. There were meetings with presidents, ministries, vice ministries on Euro integration, with mayors. The company had big plans. They selected Kyiv, Kharkiv, Odessa, Donetsk as those cities where they wanted to develop. In Ivano-Frankivsk, they even bought out certain enterprise factory that will be additional in the working of this company, but we do not fully have IKEA in the company in our country. In 2018, the founder of this company died. He left Ukraine, and in 2005 he initiated this opportunity to look at the country where we can have new market for IKEA. Publicly in the interviews, company was talking that about the fact what prevented them from entering the market: corruption, corruption obstacles from the side of local government, unfortunately. So I think that if in Ukraine we see that IKEA starts working, not like some renter, but IKEA that will build here its own stores, its own warehouses, its own production, then we will be able to say 100% that we went through this. We passed this exam and there is no corruption in our country. So this is the first case why IKEA hasn't entered our country. And now the second case, I love it a lot. I'm really grateful to the journalist of the journal Ekonomiczna Prawda, Economic Truth. They highlighted this. My recommendation for everyone to look through it and to read it. It's operation of Nabu Clean City.
Як це правильно казати? Понятійні
well, how to
документи чи
put it
понятійні
correctly,
угоди, якісь там
some
понятійки,
agreements or
де
documents
було
were
чітко
found
прописано,
where it was
що в
clearly
місті
written
Києві
that in
містобудівні умови та
Kyiv,
обмеження мають
urban development conditions and
хабар
restrictions have
виражений в
bribes
грошовій сумі в $4 мільйони.
$4
Ну, тільки
million.
вдумайтесь,
Just
містобудівні
think
умови
about
та
that.
обмеження, ви про них вже сьогодні
Urban
говорили,
development conditions and
коштують
restrictions,
для
we talked
якогось
about them today,
забудовника
cost for
4
some
мільйони
kind of
доларів. Ну, тобто, що
developer
таке
$4 million.
містобудівні умови та
So what
обмеження?
is
Це
urban development conditions and
інформація,
restrictions? That is
це навіть не
information.
дозвіл,
It is not even
яку ти можеш, повинен
permission.
за своєю
It is this
логікою
information that you
отримувати в
can
публічному
or
доступі,
achieve
зайти,
in
подивитися там
public
на порталі якомусь
access. You
публічному,
can take a look at
подивитись на
this in
всі
some kind of
обмеження, подивитись, що можна
portal.
будувати,
You
що не
can
можна будувати,
see
яка
what
там
can be built, what
поверховість, які
cannot
там
be built,
санітарні зони.
what are sanitary
Взагалі, як цей
zones
документ
there,
може
and
коштувати 4
actually
мільйони
how
доларів.
this document
А
can
є такі
cost $4
кейси,
million.
можна
But
приводити багато. Колеги вже
there can
говорили,
be
не всі
many
органи
cases like
місцевого
that provided, and
самоврядування є
colleagues have
корупційними,
already
але
mentioned
станом на
that not
сьогодні
all
є
bodies
дуже
of
багато
local government
досліджень,
are
є
corrupted,
дослідження
but there are lots of research
антикорупційної
as of now,
ініціативи
and there is
Європейського Союзу,
research of
є ще інші
anti-corruption
дослідження,
initiative of
які
the
говорять
European
про те,
Union
що
and
станом
other
на
research that
сьогодні
are
саме
talking about the fact that
містобудівні
as of
умови та
now,
обмеження є самим
such
корупційним документом,
conditions, such urban
який
development
не
conditions and
дає
restrictions,
можливості
it is
заходити
this
сюди
exact
і
document that
таким системним
does not give
міжнародним
the opportunity
девелоперам
for
і заважають
systematic international
українському
development
бізнесу
enter the country, and
тут
they
працювати,
prevent
тому що
Ukrainian business
неважливо,
from
що ти
working
будуєш,
here.
чи ти
Because
будуєш
it does not
невеличкий
matter
там
what you build here,
магазин, чи
whether
ти
you build
будуєш
small
дитячий
store
садочок,
or
чи
you
ти
build
будуєш велику
kindergarten,
якусь
or
там
you build
транспортну
some
розв'язку,
kind
чи
of
ти будуєш
huge
житловий масив, ти все одно приходиш до органу місцевого
multi-story
самоврядування
building.
за
In any
цими
case, you need
клятими
to come
містобудівними
to
умовами та
a
обмеженнями.
body of local
Ми
self-government to
шукали,
get
скажімо
such
так,
urban
цього
development conditions
нульового
and restrictions.
пацієнта.
We are looking for this
Де ж це
patient
зло цієї
zero.
корупції, як це
The
можна
sound is not good again.
здолати? Це ми зло знайшли, і ми про це, мені здається, з міністерством не один рік говоримо. Дуже вдячні парламенту за те, що в 2021 році ухвалив закон, який стосується того, що з 1 січня 2025 року всі наші українські громади повинні були мати сучасну містобудівну документацію. Цей документ називається «План просторового розвитку», що ми бачимо на сьогодні.
And what we see now,
Зараз я спробую це
I
зробити ще
will
раз.
try to once again
7
put it on
громад
the screen.
ухвалили плани
So
просторового
7
розвитку,
communities
141
already
громада лише
agreed to
розробляє.
such
Ці
plans
7
of
громад –
space
це невеличкі
development.
громади,
Such
причому це
7
громади,
communities,
які
they are small
знаходяться
communities. These are
в прифронтовій
communities
зоні
located
в
at
Харківській області,
a
в
frontline area
Дніпропетровській
in
області. Це ті
Kharkiv,
громади, які
in
хочуть
Dnipro
розвиватися,
region.
це ті
These are
громади,
these
які мають
communities
вже
that want to
відповідну
develop.
статистику, і
These are
вони
these
говорять,
communities
що
that already
станом на
have certain
сьогодні, коли ми
statistics, and they
розробили
say
такий документ,
that also
до наших
as of
бюджетів
now, when we
стало
have developed
надходити
such
більше
documents,
коштів,
we
тому
have
що ми вже
more
чітко
funds in
знаємо,
our
скільки в
budget
нас
because
землі,
we
скільки в нас
know
нерухомості,
clearly
ми вже
well
там бачимо всі свої потенціали і
the
таке інше. Але серед
that we
цих
have
7 громад ви не
real
побачите
estate
мого
and lands
рідного
and so on
міста
and so forth.
Києва
But you
чомусь,
will not see my
незважаючи на те, що в
native
Києва точно
town Kyiv
достатньо
here,
коштів.
even though
У
Kyiv
міста,
definitely
яке
has
має бюджет
enough
більше ніж
money.
120
The
мільярдів
city has
гривень,
budget of
точно
more than
знайдуться гроші для
220
того,
billion
щоб
hryvnias. It will
розробити такий
definitely find
документ,
the
але ми його не
documents for
бачимо.
developing of such document.
Що
But
ми бачимо в місті
nevertheless, we do not
Києві? Ми
see it.
бачимо
What we see
постійні
in Kyiv, we
уточнення
see
генерального плану,
constant
який, до речі,
clarification of
розроблявся ще
master
в
plan, by the way, that
97-му
was still
році.
developed in
Він на сьогодні
1997.
є
As of
діючим,
now,
чинним,
it
але він
is
точно не є
operational,
актуальним і
but
сучасним.
definitely
І
not
зараз для
modern
того,
and relevant.
щоб там
And
будуватися,
now
потрібно
to
розробляти
build, to
постійно ці
develop, we
детальні
need
плани
to
території, уточнювати
constantly work on
положення
territory
генерального
plans,
плану. До
clarify
чого це
master
приводить?
plan
Приводить до хаотичної
provisions. So it
забудови,
can lead to
до
chaotic
відсутності балансу між інфраструктурою і тими
development,
житловими
the
комплексами, які
absence of
будуються, і до
balance,
тих проблем,
and
і до
the
проблем з мережами,
problems
і з тими всіма речами, про які говорила вже Олександра.
and the
Тому я
limitation that
вважаю,
Alexandra was talking
закликаю всі
about.
громадські організації
So,
подивитись на це питання.
I would like to ask
Знаєте,
all
так пристально і
organizations to
допомагати нам
look at
працювати
it
з органами
and
місцевого
to help us
самоврядування, щоб
work
така
with bodies of local
документація на місцевому
self-government
рівні
so that
обов'язково
such
була
documents are
розроблена.
definitely
Ми вимушені
present.
були як парламент ухвалити закон,
So we
який
in the parliament
відтермінував
had to
обов'язковість
adopt the
розроблення
law
планів просторового розвитку. Ми перенесли цю
that
дату на
might
1 січня
postpone this. We
28
moved it to the
року.
1st of January of
Я боюся
2028.
особисто
And
за
I
те,
am
що
personally
як прийде 1
afraid
січня
that the
28
1st
року,
of January
громади знову
2028
почнуть
will
говорити про
come
те, що
and
немає грошей,
companies will
немає
talk
часу,
about lack of
виклики
time, lack
воєнного
of
часу тощо.
money,
Дуже би не хотілося з 1 січня це
different challenges of wartime. We
переносити. І
would not
зараз
like to
ми
move
в
it from the 1st
законодавстві
of
пропонуємо
January.
для тих громад,
And
які
now
розробляють
we
такий
offer to
документ,
those communities that developing such document to provide some additional motivation. And here we are talking that, dear communities, if you have the space of the plan for space development, then for you we will have budget financing and financing of international institutions. We will direct it to those communities that have planning, that have modern urban development documents, where these documents can already be uploaded into urban development cadastre, and every representative will be able to take a look at it and to see how the city is going to develop. That's why my first focus is that if you want to have fair rules, we need to start from the planning, and we need to start from this urban development documents. Several words about permission. We have talked a lot about such conditions and restrictions, urban development conditions and restrictions. I have mentioned that it is not a permission, that is an information that should be available, and I am sure that ministry and our partners that help us in digitalization, in small steps, we will be able to get to this matter. The permission. I am absolutely sure that no permission, no documents cannot fully, in big numbers, checked by people. As of now, we have some technical opportunities that are very high, and this automatic check, audit, and project documents, and all the other data available in the registers today, it can happen without human factor. We have development when system knows perfectly well whether it's a green area or object of cultural heritage, and the system will talk and block giving permissions for such building without engagement of a civil official. I am pretty sure the digitalized permissions have future, so we hope that ministry, together with the parliament, we will be able to introduce certain changes to the legislation so that automatic permissions become reality. Commissioning. Alexandra talked a lot about high responsibility of architects. I will be fair here, I do not see it as high. When we were developing single electronic system, our ideology was that in that system we can see clearly who introduces which information, and to have clearly fixed responsibility of each participant of construction process. It does not matter whether you're an architect or whether you're an engineer or whether you're a public official that is issuing urban development conditions and restrictions, but still the company can identify you, and you should have certain responsibility. In Parliament, we have registered draft law 5867. I do not see any chances for it to be passed during this cadence of our Parliament, but it increases not only administrative but also criminal liability and responsibility of each participant. Sometimes we are sad that, well, developers do not have increased responsibility, criminal, administrative. Why architect should be responsible for everything, or engineer? Dear colleagues, imagine that you are a developer, well, let's not put it like that. You are a regular person and you have some repairment done in your flat, and you hire people that do this, and the developer also hires architect and engineer of some engineers and subcontractor, and these are all certified specialists, and they need to do their work properly. They need to do it accordingly and with high quality, the same as you repair something in your flat. And when something is not according to the legislation, or something is of poorer quality, then who should be responsible for that? So definitely not that person who commissioned this repairment works, and definitely not the developer who hired all these people, who paid pretty high salaries to them, paid for contracts and so on and so forth, he definitely should not have this responsibility on himself, and the responsibility should be on responsible implementer of such services when this person understands clearly well what is done, for what funds, and what he's going to be responsible for. Implementation of of technologies. In Parliament, for the second reading, we are preparing the law about mandatory implementation of such technologies. So we already have what BIM technologies, building information modeling technologies. What do you mean by that? What's this? What is BIM technologies? It's building information modeling. It's not only a three-dimensional model of object, but it is also this model that can not only show you some visual things, but also technology, how the construction is taking place. It shows you the expense of each element, the price for each element, where you can change. For example, you take away one element, you choose it for you change it for something else, and the model recalculates the expenses and the price of construction. So it's a new development of informational technologies, and it provides opportunity to assess the object from the beginning, from its birth till the end of its existence. You can work on the full on all the life cycles, and you can plan certain things concerning exploitation and things like that. But it's a very transparent story. Actually, you cannot fool this BIM model because it is all digitalized, and it is pretty difficult. If, for example, you do not put some stamp somewhere, as it was about the expertise for 25,000 hryvnias, everything is in the system, everything is clear and understood. It's easily understandable. We have lots of projectors today working in BIM. We want BIM to be able to be used for those facilities that are being erected for the funds of state budget, because lots of European and Asian countries have already introduced BIM as mandatory component, because basically there are no abuses. But today, for the second reading, we cannot prepare our draft law because once again we have resistance. Once again they say that we cannot do this. We need to buy this. We need to buy special software for this special program. We need to be able to. We need to spend some certain amount of money. But dear friends, without BIM technology, we will not be able to use public funds transparently, and we will not be able to move in that direction for construction to become not corrupted as it is today. It is a topic for separate discussion. We will still have lots of things like that. We are ready to join. We will invite you because BIM is a future. Several words about monopolies. It is the next story about corruption. Each kind of monopoly is a corruption. It does not mean where it is, whether it's at the body of local self-government, whether it's certification of implementers, accreditation, private sector that is working in the networks. It doesn't matter. Any kind of monopoly is 100% corruption. Monopoly, while issuing urban development conditions and restrictions, can bring to the fact that there can be a bribe of $4 million. This monopoly should be destructed. We offered as a solution as of now to implement such arbitrage, some kind of to have SIACM, State Institute of Architectural and Construction Monitoring. It has high level of trust. If bodies of local self-government has certain abuse, then we can introduce this institute, and they will see which side should be taken, the side of the local self-government or the side of a developer that cannot get this permission, this document. Monopoly, while issuing permissions, today it is only on bodies of local self-governments. Not to decrease such monopoly, we need to get to automatic permissions, and once again this same institute, before mentioned institute, should be able to help here and be able to also perform such function. About monopoly and about certification of responsible implementers, Alexandra has already talked about engineers. We already have one guild that provides such certification, issues such certification, and it can also lead either to poor quality services, or it adds corruption component. Today we can observe how ministry experimented
в сфері сертифікації
in
архітекторів не один вищий учбовий
that there is
заклад,
no
їх
one
там
educational
7,
institutions working
здається.
in this sphere, but
І
already
таким
7 of them.
чином,
And that's
люди, які
how
підвищують свою
people that
кваліфікацію, вони
increase their
можуть обирати
qualification, that
більш
develop,
якісне
they
навчання.
can
І я би
select
рекомендувала
better
таке
training,
робити
and
з
I would
іншими,
recommend to do this with
із
other
інженерами-проектувальниками,
with
з експертами,
project
і з усіма
engineers,
іншими
with
відповідальними
experts,
виконавцями для
with
того, щоб
other
такої монополії не
responsible
було. І,
implementers not
звичайно,
to have this
монополія до
monopoly. And
підключення
of course, this
до
monopoly
мереж, приєднання до мереж.
about
Рецепт дуже простий.
connection
Відкривати
to
всю
networks.
інформацію,
We
відкривати
need to open
інформацію
all
для
the information.
замовника,
We need to
відкривати
open all the
інформацію для
information
проектувальника,
for
для того, хто конкретно знаходить найкраще рішення.
for
Поки
the
що на законодавчому рівні
client
у
and
нас
so on
було
and so
декілька
forth.
спроб
At the
це
legislation
зробити.
level,
Поки що це не
we
дуже
have had
вдається, тому
several
що приватний сектор.
attempts already.
Але без цього,
We,
без руйнування цієї монополії,
without
перш за все, на
ruining this
інформацію, ми
monopoly,
точно
first of all, for
корупційні
information,
речі
we will definitely not be able
не здолаємо.
to
І в мене, шановні
overcome
колеги, в мене
such
є останній
corruption
слайд.
component. And dear colleagues,
Я
I
вам
have the
покажу
last slide
приклад
here. Let me
неефективного
show you the
регулювання.
example of not
Показую
effective
вперше.
regulation. I
Прошу
show it for the
подивитись,
very
тому
first time.
що
Please
мені
take a look
здається,
at
це
that
може
because
бути
it
дуже
seems to me that
цікаво.
it might be extremely
Інженер-консультант.
interesting. Engineer consultant.
Це новий, скажімо так,
It's a new, let's put it like
вид
that,
інженерингових
type
послуг,
of
які
engineering
сьогодні
services that are
активно намагаються
actively,
впроваджувати
that
в
are trying to be
Україні.
actively implemented
У
in
нас
Ukraine.
ми говорили про
And
монополію.
we have talked about
Інженери-консультанти –
monopoly,
це теж
engineers, consultants, that's
народження
also
своєрідної монополії. У нас станом на сьогодні
certain monopoly.
385
As of now, we
записів
have
в реєстрі стосовно
385
інженерів-консультантів.
mentioning in the
Як ви
register
розумієте,
concerning engineers,
одна
consultants.
організація
As you understand, one organization certifies, trains, and issues such magic certificates. 60 engineers, consultants have a certificate of the higher category. 43 of them are active. They can be looked through, and everyone knows them, and so on and so forth. There is, unfortunately, Natalia left, but we have such guideline for building valuation, where it is written that the work of such engineer consultant is 3% from the price of construction works. So the higher is the price of concrete, automatically the higher is the price of the work of engineer consultant. Some kind of criminal responsibility or increased administrative responsibility will not be found. Here you will only find that his function might be very similar to the work conducted by engineer of technical monitoring. And what I'm trying to say here, that recently in Ukraine, we have this new reform about public investments. You all can visit the website of the Ministry of Finances, and you can take a look at this project portfolio of public investments. It has 149 state projects. The general number more than 11 trillion hryvnias. For 2026, more than 200 billion hryvnias planned, because these projects are being implemented not in 1 year and simultaneously. And here you do not see it, but it's an offer to urban development code. It is being actively promoted. It's about that fact that we need to have a mandatory work of engineer consultant on all significant state bodies. But now, dear colleagues, take a look. 3% reward, according to such guideline, 214 billion hryvnias, that big works for 2024, and those 43 consultants will earn 6.4 million hryvnias only in 2026. It is an example of not effective regulation. It should not be allowed, and it is matter not of equality, but it is that matter that today this monopoly that is being created on the market of engineer consultants should be talked about. It should be destroyed. We need to take better practices, how it works in the European Union, and create the institute of really professional, independent engineer consultant that will really work on difficult projects. But this regulation that is being created right now for us should be absolutely forbidden. It should be taboo. I am not afraid of talking about this publicly, because those trends that we are observing right now and today from various angles, and if we monitor прозоро.
Рекомендую, пане Іване, помоніторити,
I recommend Ivan to monitor, to take a look
консультанта, які об'єкти вони
at the price of services of engineer consultant, what objects they're working with and what's going on with that. The sound is not good again.
Такі кошти і мати таку якість, яка не відповідає нашим очікуванням, і знайти потім правильні рішення, яким чином це відрегулювати на ринку. Я можу ще багато говорити, але хочу надати можливість нашим колегам. Величезне вам дякую за таку можливість. І, будь ласка, не зупиняйтесь, розмотуйте цей клубок проблем в будівельній галузі.
Please do not stop work with these problems of construction more, because this construction sphere is really unique one. It gives development to the whole economic sector, and we have DSCT, we have Defense City. We unfortunately do not have Construction City, even though construction companies as of now really going through not the best times, and they need to have certain support, because they will already now even they already have big tasks ahead of them and they need to overcome them. Thank you. Thank you, Olena. And immediately this blitz question, whether our companies are ready to this big reconstruction, yes or not? Yes, they are ready to big reconstruction because they remained in Ukraine. They have been working here despite everything. What they are doing now requires lots of respect. They create working places, they create jobs, they enter industrial parks, they plan to build new factories, and despite everything, the most important thing that they have stayed here, and on the 24th of February of 2022 they were here and they still remain here, so they're definitely ready, and our task is to help them so that they are more quality and more competitive in comparison with international companies. Thank you. We tried to engage as many stakeholders as possible today. Unfortunately, Anna Keri from Architectural Design Group couldn't join us. So Max, you will have here this difficult task to present projectors here. You work in the company that is dealing with project works in the sphere of construction. Apart from that, your head is an American guy, Daniel. So I'm pretty sure that in your company, you probably discuss pretty often the challenges that you might be in the sphere of construction. So I would like to ask you to share what obstacles are you facing with? So what is the priority? What has to be changed? And immediately I would like to ask my blitz question, whether companies are ready in Ukraine. And yes, well, it's very interesting to hear whether you use those BIM technologies. Yes, we do. We do use them. Hello, colleagues. It's a very interesting discussion. We every day face those problems that Alexandra was talking about and other speakers. That's why every day we are trying to overcome them. And see what problems we would like to solve with the state. First and foremost, our task, we are dealing with consulting, we are dealing with projecting, we are dealing with technical monitoring and construction managing for various international financial enterprises, various international construction companies, engineering companies. And when we start working with these companies, they have certain requirements for us, contractual as well. Well, first and foremost, not only we, other companies as well that are working, they cannot sometimes meet such requirements, or they perform them but not fully. First and foremost, it's implementation of bank guarantees while
Це
projecting,
забезпечення
and
страхування
it is
професійної відповідальності, страхування і
insurance of
ризиків,
professional responsibility,
робочого
risk
персоналу
insurance,
на
and
об'єктах.
insurance of
Дуже багато
staff
таких
at the
контрактних вимог,
at
і
places,
у
lots of
цьому випадку
contractual
держава має
requirements. And in
виступати
this case, the
модератором і
state should be
створювати
as a
такі
moderator,
умови,
and the state
які
needs to create
дозволять
such conditions that
українським
will
підрядникам,
let
проєктувальникам,
Ukrainian
будівельникам
subcontractors,
реалізувати
projectors,
ці міжнародні
constructors to
контракти.
implement
Це
all international
основна
contracts. It is the
повинна
main
бути задача
task. It should be the main task
держави.
for the state.
Наш форум називається
Our forum
«Відбудова під
is
час
called
ризиків». Так от, це
Reconstruction at
ті
risk.
ризики,
So
які є
these
у
are
нас.
actually those risks that we are facing with.
По-друге,
And the second thing
слід завершити гармонізацію
that we need
будівельних
to
норм
finalize with the
з
harmonization of
європейськими
construction norms with
стандартами.
European standards,
Бо достатньо
because
часто
pretty
з нами
often
працюють
we
інженерні
have
компанії
engineering companies working
міжнародні,
with
і ми
us,
не
international
розуміємо.
companies, and we do not
Ми
understand.
уточнюємо коефіцієнти, ми
We
уточнюємо
clarify
методологію
quotients, we understand the
розрахунків і так далі,
methodology
так
of
далі, так далі.
calculations, and so on and so
Якщо ця
forth.
компанія
If this
займається
company is dealing
управлінням
with
будівництва,
the
вони
management
не
of
розуміють, як це
construction,
працює
they
у
do not
нас, а
understand
в них
how
це
it works
працює
here, because
по-іншому.
in
І
their
це
country it
також
works
треба
differently. And it
гармонізувати.
also has
І
to be
дуже гарний
aligned,
приклад
harmonized, and really
ми
great
можемо
example here
використовувати
is that we can use
методологію FIDIC,
methodology of FIDIC,
методологію контрактів FIDIC.
methodology of
Вона
FIDIC
дуже прозора,
contracts. It is
вона дуже
extremely
структурована.
transparent, very
І
structured,
там є
and
всі
it has
відповіді
all the
для
answers
того, щоб цих ризиків не було.
not to have
І для
such
того, щоб
risks,
ми
and
гармонізовано працювали з
to
нашими
work
міжнародними
in
замовниками
alignment
і
with
з
our
державою.
international clients and state.
Ще такий є аспект.
One more
Дуже
aspect
багато міжнародних
is that lots of
організацій
international organizations
управляють проектами,
are managing the
сидячи
projects
за кордоном.
from abroad.
І тут теж
And
держава повинна,
once again, the
це
state
проекти
here should,
соціальні, це
these are
проекти
social
відбудови
projects,
і
these
так
are
далі.
recovery projects, and so on.
І у
And
цих процесах держава
in
теж
all these
повинна
processes, the
регулювати
state
деякі
also should
питання,
regulate certain
вибачте,
certain
витягувати
matters
замовників і компаній, які виконують управління проектами сюди в Україну.
to actually bring back
Або
those
ці
companies
компанії
here
повинні
to
бути
Ukraine,
українськими.
or these companies
І
should
в
be
нас є
Ukrainian.
такий ресурс
And
дуже
we have
багато.
such resource, we have
Останнім
lots of
часом дуже
resources
багато
like that.
з'явилось професійних
Recently, we have
менеджерів
had lots of
проєктів, які
professional
мають
project
міжнародну
managers. They have
сертифікацію,
international
і
certification,
по ISO, і по
ISO
PMP.
and PMP.
Тобто ми готові
So we
робити
are
це,
ready
і
to do
ми
that,
готові
and
конкурувати
we are
в
ready
цьому
to
плані з
compete
європейськими
here
компаніями.
with European companies.
Держава
So
повинна
the
нам надати
state
такі
should
можливості,
provide us with
ну,
such
і
opportunities
запустити цей
and to launch
проект.
this project.
Також я трошки хотів би сказати
I would like to talk a little
щодо
bit
технічного нагляду.
about
Ми
the
також
technical
займаємося
monitoring,
технічним
because we have
наглядом.
been dealing with
І
this as well.
на нашу
And
думку,
in
треба
our opinion,
всі процедури, всі
all the
регламенти,
procedures, all the
які
regulations
використовують
that are
інженери технічного
being
нагляду,
used by engineers of
звести
technical
їх в
monitoring,
окремий
we need
документ
to
для того, щоб
bring them, to
і
put them all
замовник,
together in one
і
document so that
підрядник,
the
і проектувальник також,
subcontractor, the client,
а
and
насамперед
projector,
інженер
and first and
технічного
foremost,
нагляду
the
мав
engineer of
такий
technical monitoring
мануал,
has this
такий
manual,
гайд,
this guide,
на прикладі котрого
on the example of
всі ці
which
стейкхолдери
all
могли
these
працювати.
stakeholders would be able to work.
І
And
ми також просимо
we
державу,
are
щоб вона
also
посприяла
asking
в
the
цьому,
state to
і
help
всі
us in
документи
this
об'єднати.
endeavor and to unite all these
Ну,
documents.
щодо Фідіка я казав, це
Concerning
дуже
FIDIC, I have already
дуже
mentioned, it's
цікава
a very
методологія,
interesting
і
methodology, and
я бачу, що
I see
взагалі всі проекти, з
that
якими ми
actually all the
стикаємось,
projects we have been
вони
facing with,
беруть за
they
основу цю методологію.
take as a basis this
Вона
methodology.
може
So
бути
it
трошки
might be a
модифікована
little bit
під
modified
різні проекти. Ну, це
for different
насамперед таке.
projects, but that's how it is. That's the way it
І
is. And concerning your report, I would like to say that if we at least solve 50% of matters that you have shown, it would be an amazing impulse and incentive for all of us to start working in a more productive way, in a more high quality way. Thank you.
Пане Максе, ваша відповідь на моє
Max, your answer to my Bliss question. Ready. Okay, great. Alexander, you are representatives of Confederation of Builders of Ukraine. That's why you will be talking here on behalf of all the builders. But the question is similar. What obstacles do you see on the market? What is in top priority? And whether the companies are ready for big reconstruction? Thank you for the invitation. I managed to get to look through the analytics and report, and really we participated in the survey. Yes, a big work has been done on increasing salaries, but when trade unions approached us, we had only one question: to increase salaries, because this level, the social frame. Well, there are various ways, but it was the only correct way, the dialogue. Government, business, employers, and the question how to prove it now to clients of the construction that actually this is this minimum threshold, because we have agreement, we have increased minimum thresholds, but still we have administratives, military administrations, donors, and it seems to me that communities do not fully understand that this frame is lifted and that they can use this mechanism, or actually that it's mandatory already. They do not need to get back to different other methodologies. The second thing, that we are really grateful to the ministry for creating this task force on pricing in general. We hope that we will have results, but the question how soon they will be developed, this will be the compromise already, which way to go, a normative way. But here we already see this challenge, that it might be a great idea, but how we implement them. The second thing is the human capital. Yes, one of the biggest problems of business is lack of employees. This is the first thing. The second thing, objectively, one of the targets that we have for us, it is that you need to understand construction market, the labor market has component of shadow market, and it is being justified by mobilization processes, difficulties with exemption from mobilization, agents, subcontractor of a private entrepreneur, and so on and so forth. So here we really have this question with exemption from mobilization, and not employees are ready to work, because if they are not exempted, then they are under the official light. But also there are also some taxation and so on and so forth. Refunds, problems with advance payments. So if there are some budget projects, you know that banks have huge assets, and maybe when there are budget funds and when the state is not always can cover advance payments on time, we have the army, we have the war, maybe we need to have some budget incentives to use not long-lasting, not project crediting, but giving access to business so that they can pay salaries to employees, so that they can pay taxes. Concerning the staff, the employees, we are now actively engaged in a range of projects and development of roadmap of preparing and training specialists of construction sphere of professional technical level. But here we chose different way. We now have the stage of big research, because on paper we have specialists of various directions trained, but then during 3 years we have absolutely no graduates in certain professions, even though we have majority of works are with concrete and with monoliths, but on paper such specialists exist, but in reality, no. And here with business, we even went to the reviewing of standards. Also, we need to, for some professions, maybe we do not need that. We need to review the curriculum. We do not need that much theory for some professions. And specialists, they have low level of knowledge, and the company does not take a look and the level of knowledge, and it trains everything on its own. The companies teach everything on its own in any case. So we need to review here the motivation of dual education. That's a great example, but also in several projects, we are now preparing our offers. In particular, we are here learning the experience of Germany. When first employee reaches, goes to the employer, and then goes for additional training. So we need to have incentives of such policies. As a project together with EBRD agreed the project will be infrastructurally financed in Ukraine. The components should be training of the specialists and their involvement to such projects for subcontractor companies. These are all 3 projects. They are at the beginning, but I think that the timeline is not more than 1 year, and we will be able to already have some to have some results. And if everything is finishes with success, we can scale to other sectors. Concerning reconstruction, the companies are ready, even more so. Let's say that normal companies are not afraid of reconstruction and of foreign partners, because in foreign partners, they see access to free funds that can gap operational expenses, and sometimes they see it as access to expertise. And we have a range of Euro integration commitments and expertise in this part as well. And one more risk is that companies that have been dealing with business, only with business projects, the war changed infrastructure of the industry. Now clients are usually with budget funds, donor funds, and for companies not to worry about their reputation. For state programs, they create a new company. So there is flagman brand company, and for budget money, it is additional company, because they understand that there can be criminal cases, audits, several circles of audits, because we have so many law enforcement bodies. They all come to check, even prosecutor's office. They have 3 levels of check. Local, general, and so on and so forth. But these are really high risks. And foreign partners, they very often focus on the imperfection of a court system, that you cannot guarantee protection even in court. For them, it's okay. But those challenges that might appear, everyone is ready. It's just we do not have projects of reconstruction. We, apart from reconstructing what is ruined, it's okay. The sound is not proper.
І в тій частині у нас є ряд пілотних проєктів. Дякую і Міністерству розвитку громад та територій, Міністерству охорони здоров'я. Довгі переговори бюрократичні, але там є консорціум архітекторів, які погодилися зробити на
Because there are architects that agreed to agree with this with the Ministry of Education. This is a typical in the Ministry of Health, and it is a typical project that the hospital of the regional level, and they will use the best experience that can be scaled in any kind of community without spending budget funds, without spending time on developing the new project. We can just, if there is a budget, you can order the new one. If no, you can use for free typical project. You can localize it and involve funds for construction. You will get quality product with modern technologies and with the best expertise that consortiums working on it. That's how it works in Europe.
І в цій частині
And in that
цей
part,
пілотний проект
this pilot
нас
project
надихнув на інші
inspired
ініціативи.
us for other initiatives as
Ми
well.
її анонсували
We
старт,
have
але для того,
announced the
щоб її
start of
запустити
such
в повній
initiatives,
мірі,
but to launch
наші
it fully,
партнери та
our
громади. Ми
partners
залучили
and
4 найбільші
communities,
асоціації громад,
municipalities, we
Асоціація міст України,
associated,
Асоціація
we
українських громад,
engaged Association of Cities of Ukraine,
ОТГ,
Association of
Асоціація
Amalgamated
Малих
Communities,
міст.
Association
Я
of
знаю, там
Small
ще
Towns.
є
I
нові,
know that we have some
але
new
ми основні там
ones, but
залучили,
we
тому
engage
що
the
вони наші
main ones
партнери
because they
і
are our
замовники,
partners and
представники громад.
clients,
І
representatives of
хочемо
municipalities. And we
масштабувати
want to
ось,
scale
проект
the project of our the project. We want to create the catalog of projects that will. It has 3 types. So the cases that will be already being implemented in Ukraine, where architects are ready to share for free. They still need to be aligned with the forms of the non-realized concepts that they were okay, but they have never been implemented. And now there is opportunity to implement them. And the third thing is development of new. There is this desire to develop something new. And donors are ready to finance that, or governments of certain countries, so that this technology can be used in Ukraine. What is the idea? The idea is to develop the project to have expertise, and any kind of client for such projects will get it for free if it's for budget money. And of course, everything has to be localized. Why? Because several donors asked that we have this dream system, it's amazing, maybe there are some questions how it might function, whether it functions well enough. Everyone asks that the war might end tomorrow. We have lots of funds allocated. What should be financed? What projects do you have? Whether we have enough of such projects, whether they cover the needs of certain communities or municipalities. So there was this report of the European Bank reported that tranche of funds was issued, but they were not used because there were no projects for that. And the second thing, expertise of our experts have proven that there are 2 similar projects. Why? Because we offer typical projects, because we have rational, justified budgets there. There is also this, whether there is this practice of similar projects and capacities, but in different other regions where budgets can be different in 10 times, tenfold different. If it's a typical social facility, we do not have that much funds that we can invest, but then it can be rationalized, and it is clear, and that's how we can plan. We build, we plan, we have a certain average budget. So this is initiative in this part concerning the projects that we initiate. And on foreign investors, what also prevents them? We have lots of deregulation processes. Licensing is okay, but we have licensing here. I would correct this analysis a little bit, but it's just much simpler form. We have new conditions for licensing. We were actively engaged in this development. We, by the way, mentioned that there shouldn't be license for the whole fleet of equipment that can be rented, because you do not every time work with extremely important projects. But the risks of our partners and that are afraid to enter the Ukraine, they are ready to look for partner to share the risks that they still do not clearly understand. They do not understand how our market works. So we have lots of deregulation processes, and they are limited because after the war they are in the operational for half a year, and then there will be something else. And the foreigner does not understand how something can be planned, whether there will be a new act, but he invests money. If it is adopted, then whether this person will be able to bring everything in alignment, his business in particular. So that's why in the part of licenses, foreigners immediately consult with lawyers, and they look for old companies. They just buy old companies with licenses because they already have licenses. A declarative form gives them some kind of assurance.
може бути
There
детально
can
інших, ми
be
їх намагаємося
more
якось
many
об'єднати і
cases like that.
шукати
We try to
комплексні,
gather them somehow
пропонувати
and to
шляхи
offer
вирішення і в діалозі з
solutions,
міністерством,
and
з
in dialogue with
парламентом,
ministry, with
з іншими
parliament, with
стейкхолдерами,
other
до
stakeholders.
речі,
By
їх
the way,
намагатися реалізувати,
we try
донести
to
і
implement that
допомогти
and to
тими
help
можливостями, якими володіємо. По діаму
using this
дійсно
opportunity that we
підтверджуємо,
have.
у нас
Concerning
до
DIAM,
створення діаму як
yes,
нової інституції,
concerning this
кожне засідання наших
SIACM, State Institute for Architectural and
компаній
Construction
починалося з тим,
Monitoring,
що
every
діам,
session of
DIAM
our Confederation
було
of
дуже
Builders
професійною
started from the fact that it
установою.
used to be the previous
Ми трохи так
facility was very
отримання дозволу,
corrupted
введення
because it
експлуатації
had
і
3
там
stages: giving
перевірки.
permission, commissioning,
Зараз
and then
до
audits.
діаму
Now,
взагалі нема
to this
претензій.
institute,
Хоча
there are
в них завжди
absolutely no
відкрито
complaints. It's
керівництво
always
підходить і готове до діалогу.
they're always
І
open, they're always ready to dialogue, and they can explain, if there are some typical examples, they can explain business that we are checking
як їх
some
варто виправити.
matters, how they
Але є
should be
ризики.
corrected. But there
В
are
тому,
risks.
все чудово,
Risks, everything
чи поки є гарний ще менеджер, який
is
цим
okay,
опікується.
while there is
Чи
still
є
good
ризики, якщо
manager dealing
зміниться
with this.
силу
But
лідерів в
if,
політичних ситуаціях
because of some
менеджер, чи
political
буде
situation manager
підтримка,
changes, whether the
така
support
політика і далі.
still
Але
be
наразі дійсно вважаємо,
there.
що
But
інструмент
currently, we do
якби
believe that this
альтернативний,
tool
навіть як
of
запропоновано
alternative,
вам
even as it was
на СС2 в
offered,
громаді, щоб піти в діам, а не в суд.
you need to, you can go not to court, but to the State Institute. And by the way, the State Institute already delegated this in places. If it's possible to have this alternative, then it will be, then maybe communities, municipalities start thinking about losing this option, and business will get certain alternatives. Thank you, Alexander. Sorry, I need to interrupt you because we are a little bit outside of our timeline, and I would like to give this opportunity for our audience to ask questions. So that's why, please, if you have any questions, please ask them. Yes, I see hands raised.
Вітаю, Сергій Меткалик, громадська
Hello,
організація
Sergey
«Антикорупційний
Metkalik,
штаб» і наша
Organization
організація
Anti-Corruption
активно
Staff, and
моніторить
our
закупівлі
organization is actively
будівлі,
monitoring
і,
tenders
звісно,
and
що
procurements on
питання
reconstruction,
ціни
and of
повинно
course the
назріло,
matter of
і
pricing
його потрібно розглядати.
has to be
Питання
reformed. And
насправді
I
до
actually have this question to the
відновлення
Ministry of
по
Reconstruction
насправді кодексу. От мене
concerning
з
the code,
презентації, що ви хочете
because from that
зробити,
presentation,
шалено
what you
підтримую
want to
більшість
do, I
ініціатив. У мене
absolutely
тільки одне
support majority
зауваження,
of
можливо,
initiatives. I
навіть
have
ризик.
only
Ви
one remark, maybe
плануєте
even
з
risk. You are
часів
planning,
зробити
based on your words,
кодифікований
to have
перелік
codified,
матеріалів,
let's say,
які,
list of
по
materials
яких ціноутворення, там цегла, де буде від 5,
for
там від 8
pricing,
до 48 гривень.
concrete, and
А
so on
чи
and so
створить
forth.
це навпаки
But it
корупційне
might create,
обмеження?
once
Це
again,
регуляція
corruption
фактично на
limitations, because it will be
матеріалів, які
regulation
створить
of
для
materials,
виробників
and
нових
it might,
можливість
for
подати
new
туди свої товари, які не зможуть зайти.
new
І,
producers will not
власне,
be able
ну,
to
є дуже
include
схожий
their
був
products
елемент,
here.
як з
And there was very
Міністерством
similar
оборони,
element like with the
коли
Ministry of
вони спочатку
Defense,
купували
when at
харчі,
the
а потім
beginning
вони
they were
зробили
buying
перелік меню, і меню став
food,
ці
and then they had the
посилати
list of
якраз
menu, and in
і
the menu those
через
acts
оце
started
меню.
costing
І
17
дуже
hryvnias
хвилююся,
because of
щоб
that
під
menu.
час
So I'm really
ціноутворення
worried that
матеріалів
during
ми не
pricing
попали
of
в залежність
construction
від
materials, we can
вже
get
напрацьованої
into
виробниками і бажання
dependence
пролобіювати свій товар
from this
тільки
desire
буде
to
через
lobby
там
their
міністерство.
product
Дякую.
through the ministries. Thank you. Thank you. Let's gather all the questions. I saw also some hands here.
Дякую. Павло Сиротка, програма розвитку ООН.
Pavlo Saratka,
Моя
the
організація
program of
належить до
development.
тих, хто
My
не
organization
з-за кордону, власне,
is not
намагається розвивати
trying
інфраструктуру.
to develop
І,
infrastructure from
ну,
abroad,
на місці багато
and
бачимо, як
we
виглядає це
see
все
a lot how
реально,
this
як
might,
і ви знаєте.
how
І,
this really looks
в мене
like. We see
питання
how it
таке,
looks like
що
here because we are
ми,
here. You know
часто
this as
забуваємо,
well. So I have
що
this question that we very often
будівельна
forget,
галузь, вона
that
працює не
construction
для
industry
забудовника, не
works not
для
for developer,
квадратних
it
метрів,
works
для
not for
кінцевого
square meters,
користувача,
it works for
яким
final
є ми всі,
user.
коли
And we are these final
ходимо по
users
місту,
when
коли
we
живемо
walk
в
around the
якійсь споруді і
city,
так
when
далі.
we live in some kind of
І
building and so
питання
on
в
and so
мене
forth.
наступне,
So my
що
question
коли
is the
ми
following. So when we
оптимізуємо,
optimize,
зменшуємо
when we
ціну
minimize the
проектних
price
робіт
of
за
project
рахунок
works
закупівлі на Прозоро
through
найдешевшого
buying on Prozoro the cheapest subcontractor, looking for the cheapest subcontractor on tag monitoring. We're not implementing the system that you have mentioned about that helps through engineer consultants really solve lots of problems. When we say no to this influence of communities on what is going on construction site during projecting, maybe, in your opinion, we might have this fact that for 90% of the price, because really some small funds, we were talking about some small funds in general expenses, but we will not get 100% of quality, but only 50% of quality. It is not proportionally viable. Thank you.
Дякую. Тобто я розумію,
Thank you.
перше
So I
питання це
understand
було
that the
до пані
first
Наталі.
question was to Natalia.
Так, давайте останнє питання.
Yes, please, the last question.
Тут колега ще хотів, тобто не останнє.
Colleagues also wanted to ask here, not the last one. Stetsanko Alexander, European Investment Bank. I actually have this question. Alexander from Confederation mentioned it, and I have the question to the ministry. So you know the procedure from the very beginning to commissioning stage. So it's pretty effective in peaceful times, but during hostilities that are taking place in the country now, taking into account the volumes in reconstruction, whether the ministry is planning to implement the practices of the project of constant usage wider, or maybe you consider some changes in regulation policy for decreasing such timelines for more effective work. Thank you. Yevhen Belinsky, I have this question. It's about the same. It's about pricing check. As a person with experience in prosecution, I can say that the more audits there, the more opportunities to open the case. And in every object of construction, we have several cases in reality. So accordingly, I am now have this radical liberal approach, but are you sure that we need to check pricing of each element? Because, for example, from the point of view of implementing of donor projects that I have been dealing with recently, we had absolutely different approach. We need, in the shortest period of time, to get with the highest quality the product that we have ordered. And we have the procedure without getting into such details, and usually it brings us to a very good result. Thank you. So we have question about pricing, about quality. I have been sitting here for 2 hours already. Transparency International. I have also the question concerning pricing, and that is to Maxim probably. I don't know, but I'm interested to continue what you have been talking about. Whether the project for private subcontractor and for the state subcontractor is different from the point of view of pricing, salaries, some details, and so on and so forth. If you don't mind, could you please explain it? I don't know. My moderator should decide which question we might tackle. Let's start from Natalia, because we had majority of questions to you. Thank you, colleagues. I will try to combine the first and the last question because they are relevant. You see, we have been already having such a negative experience of our colleagues on database of prices to understand who it might be, because we really understand that when the producer is a source of information, there might be some problems. We understand it clearly well, and we already have such cases. So definitely not to form monopolies. We formed several sources of filling in this information for certain categories of construction products. That's why I have mentioned tax office, because in our understanding, what is mentioned and what is implemented, what is stated and what is implemented should coincide. And since there are 36 categories of such construction products according to the 35 regulation, we have problem only with glass let's say with volumes. And with all the other categories of construction materials, the main ones on the territory of Ukraine, we have no problems at all. So that's why to talk that filling in this database, because they are not going to be the only ones, there are going to be lots of them, that they filling in the base that they can influence as producers the price. Here we are not afraid of that because it's going to be there are going to be lots of stakeholders. So that's why the spectrum of whole bodies connected to this price should show us the average number. And it is not state regulation. I want all of us not to confuse this. That is using this, it's not state regulation, it's just a source of information. If you have some other opinions, how not to lead to this increase of monopolization, we are definitely ready to hear them out because we had brainstorming with lots of stakeholders concerning how it might look like. If you have any other ideas that might be useful for us, we will definitely be happy to listen to you. And concerning the last question, whether we need to look at every screw, we are talking about pricing here at what you're talking about, it's contractual, but now we are talking about what is on the stage of investing. What is about definitely mandatory for monitoring as of now? What number of construction products do we monitor? Screws, for example? Definitely not. We are talking about 60% of pricing products. That's category that we are going to offer. The sound is not proper.
Об'єктів ціноутворюючими може бути до 60% будівельної продукції, яка використовується при розробленні проектної документації на інвесторській стадії.
On the stage of investment, and I would like to mention that in Ukraine we have two principles of implementing the project. It's a solid price and agreement price. So price to the quality of documents should be in accordance with a solid price, because on this stage we form the upper threshold, upper limit, and we understand that from that upper limit we go down, and we definitely shouldn't have such situation for this upper limit to have certain kinds of manipulations. I really hope that I managed to answer your question, and if you don't mind, I would like to talk about the project of reuse. As of now in Ukraine we have the institution of the project of reuse, but we understand clearly well that it is important. What is important for us when we're talking about new construction? As of now, for example, the EBRD, if I'm not mistaken, because it definitely was not a European bank, was developing certain categories of construction with projects of reusage with all energy efficiency norms and civil protection norms. So I mean shelters. It was the center of providing administrative services, kindergarten and school. The Pashelko architectural group was doing this. They have amazing projects and they can be used as projects of reuse. So do not consider it as advertisement. It's just we analyzed them. If to talk about legislation, regulation of the very philosophy of projects of reuse, it does exist. If you see how it might be improved, tell us how, because we as ministry cannot implement them, but at least we can make it as a form in the state. It is there, and actually there are already certain developments. All the projects of reuse are registered in registered. You can take a look because there are similar projects on shelters for a certain number of children, and we can use them as well. But we shouldn't forget about copyright and all the other components here. I hope that I answered all the questions that were asked to me. We had another question concerning the quality, and we had another question asked to Max. Let me answer your question here. Well, we are not really interested in working with state projects. Unfortunately, without microphone, there is no sound for interpretation. Well, it's a very big question. And within this
ми не
discussion,
зможемо
we will not be able to define.
Так. Тому, я кажу вам, як
That's
воно є.
why I'm telling you
Ми
as
ще
it
не
is.
готові працювати.
We are not ready
Наша
to
компанія,
work. Our company is
хоча ми
not
дуже
ready,
гнучкі,
even though we are very flexible.
і, можливо,
And
через
maybe
місяць ми зможемо це
in 1
робити.
month we will be able
Якщо
to do
можна, я
that.
тут перехоплю
I
трошки,
would
можливо,
like
потім
to add a
Сергій ще
little
візьме
bit here. Maybe Sergey will talk,
з того, що ми коли
but
говорили з
from what we
компаніями,
were
які
talking
самобудують,
with the
вони
companies,
кажуть, що різниця є.
they
Більше
say that there
авансів в
is a
приватному
difference. The
секторі, але
advance payments are bigger in private sector, but especially several players in the market mentioned that it is really great to work with international projects, and it is absolutely different quality of expertise, of technical monitoring, and so on and so forth. So we have heard lots of stories there that there are several experts, one in Ukraine, one abroad, for instance, and they look at the projects in a correct way, and there is this technical monitoring in separate levels, and they really give some advice if something is done in a wrong way, and it is done in certain deadlines very clearly without any kind of problems. And when we are talking about 3 segments, let's say public procurements, public sector, private sector, and international projects, then from what I understood, it's from with international projects, people like working better because in the process of work they can learn something, and it is really appreciated. And there was this question about price. I think that Ivan can comment here as well, because actually public procurements, we very often the only criteria of selecting one or the other contractor is a price. And here Ivan can comment, but I just know what we see that in monitoring of reconstruction, if it's really competitive tenders, so open trades, they only pay attention to price. But let's not forget about technical requirements. If all were going according to price, all public officials will be using Deolanos, but for some reason they are buying Toyota Prado and some other Skoda Kodiaq. So if all wanted to have something cheap, they will all use Deolanos. So that's why it is not very correct wording, because every client has some technical requirements. The same about construction. In project, it has project documentation where it is written, I want to have here this, here I want to have some bow, here I want to have some arc, here I have something else. So we cannot put it like that. So my question actually was about these approaches to pricing. I can reflect already here or not? So we are still answering the questions. Maybe it seems to me that Alexander wanted to add something. So answering your question, not everything is so simple in those public procurements. But after the discussion, I understood in the sphere of construction, everything is very complicated generally. I can only add here that we were talking with some contractors that in donor projects, there are also some conditions and standards that are not really needed for construction works. For instance, adhering to COVID standard on certain projects, and it is a rather expert approach. It depends on who's preparing project documentation for this or that tender. Price criteria, well, now it's allowed for tenders to use various other criteria, but there is a difference. Private projects, just let me explain here that private projects will use it. There are no funds where to invest from. So that's why business to survive need to work better with donors. The price can be higher. With the state, even those who do not want to work have to work, because it's the main now, let's say, client in Ukraine. Just a few words about the quality, if you don't mind. I would like to answer your question here. It is this illusion and myth that system Prozoro public procurements work according to the criteria of the lowest price. It is definitely not like that. Ivan has already mentioned that there are certain criteria. It's just the problem that sometimes the client writes down conditions in such a way
чи підрядник, чи виконавець робіт тощо.
that only certain
Навіть якщо ми говоримо про проектування, тут також не основний
implementer can
чинник
work,
це
can
ціна.
win.
Тут є у
Even if
нас
we
і
talk about
якісні
projecting, not the main
характеристики,
factor
і
here is
правда, коли в
price.
тебе є
Here we
проектна
have
документація. В
quality
проектній документації
characteristic,
в тебе
and really
написано,
when
що
there
ти
is a
повинен
project
стіну
documentation
зробити
and it is written
з цегли,
in
потім
project
там
documentation
заштукатурити,
that
написати
you
якісь
need
там
to
речі.
do something in certain way,
Трошки,
then
ну, неправда. Треба більше
it's a
там,
little bit
можливо, там
wrong.
заглибитись,
We
там
maybe
подивитись
need
в
to
ту
get deeper
проблему,
here. We need to take
яким
a look at
чином
this problem and
виписуються
we
ці
need to
вимоги, і
see how
зробити їх
these
там більш
requirements are written
конкурентними,
down and to make them
ніж саме
competitive as well.
оцей чинник ціна.
Not this very factor of quality and
Я б ще
price.
додав, що зараз
I would like to add here
в
that
законопроекті
in draft law
11520,
11520 that will come at some point to the second reading,
ну там є не все там так радужно,
not
щоб всі
everything is
думають, що там
so
все хорошо,
wonderful
там
there
будуть інші
because everyone
проблеми,
believes that
але
it is
тим не
great, but
менш
there will be some other
є
problems. But
таке
nevertheless,
поняття вводиться
we
як творчі
have
конкурси.
this
І от в
notion
сфері
there as
будівництва,
a
мені здається,
creative
питання творчих конкурсів доволі
competition.
важливе,
And
тому
in the
що
sphere
тут
of
було б
construction,
добре
it is very
якраз послухати
important matter because
архітекторів,
here we need
які
to listen to
малюють
architects that are
підходи до тих чи
drawing
інших
approaches
проєктів, власне.
to some projects.
Якою
And
візуалізацією це має
what
бути, і таке
visualization
інше. І
should be
отут уже
there and so
така
on and so forth.
креативність
So
іде. І
here
отут
we already
оцінюється
have this
креативність, і
creative
звісно, що
component, and
така
here
річ
creativity
дорожче.
is assessed, and of
І
course that this is going to be
з
more
прийняттям цього закону
expensive. And
такий,
with
така
adopting of this
процедура,
law,
як вид,
such
має бути
procedure
впроваджена в електронній системі
as a certain
закупівель-проводження.
type should be implemented in the electronic system of procurement Prozoro. We have our own opinion here concerning competitions. First of all, in our opinion, based on our experience, every country should be ready to regulation, any kind of regulation. That's the first thing. The second thing is that in this context, we have just discussed this matter of technical tasks, project on the one hand. On the other hand, we are talking about implementing of competition system. On the other hand, we are talking about the quality of project documents and about expertise, in inverted commas. So that's why, in our understanding, this food chain should be viewed commonly, whether the country is ready for this food chain, whether it's ready in all the facilities. If it's memorial, I agree 100% that it's competition and it should be amazing top. If it's a school in some kind of populated area, once again, we understand the moods. And here we need to understand that we, as a country that has ability to read any kind of law, to interpret any kind of law the way it interprets it, because it's the talent of our people. And the developer reads it in one way, interprets it in one way, and implementers reads it in a different way, and law enforcement bodies are very talented in it. So that's why here we need to be very careful that any kind of sound idea can be disrupted, and whether country is ready for this. Because in our opinion, here we have several components. The first one, when during the tender, taking into account this technical task, the advantage is price. In our we think that it is not so well in construction, because we need to look at it in symbiosis of constructive solution and price, because sometimes at this stage, well, not sometimes, but we do not take into account the price of life cycle, so we do not see how project solutions can influence exploitation, because the main advantage for the winner is the price. And the second, about the competition, if it shouldn't be about the earning on the process, because we see certain risks here as well, unfortunately. And we believe that this idea might be still disturbed. So we need to understand for which facilities it is mandatory, where it can be on voluntarily basis, and how this process looks like, for this not to have like a separate process. Of forming of money mass outside. Dear colleagues, I cannot help but mentioning something here. We have this decree of Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, number 2137, that was adopted in 1999, 25 of November. It is still in force. It's about conducting architectural and urban development competitions. I don't know when you figure out this regulation, but dear colleagues, we were talking about monopolies today. What is written in this regulation? Let me read it out, because I don't believe that you all know what is written there. It's written there that the program and conditions of architectural competition should be agreed with the client of the competition, with executive body of city council and city organization of National Union of Architects. It is a monopoly. I do not see here any kind of public discussion, any kind of public hearings. And these are actually those things that Natalia was talking about this food chain. Dear colleagues, no monopoly should exist. And I would like to focus your attention right now here. We talk a lot about people, about the reform and decentralization, about how municipalities make decisions. People should be here first and foremost, not kind of national unity, not executive body. Decisions should be made by the municipality, especially now, if to talk about numeralization, about such important for us things connected with full-scale invasion, people, communities, and not some local organization of unity of architects, with all due respect. Thank you. Just one small remark. What can improve conducting of such tenders? We discussed it with Europeans and the Institute of Market Consultations before you announce some kind of tender. We need to see whether such criteria should be put there for the subject or not. This is the first thing. And the second thing, and what it can lead to. And for tender, it might be different when it's one or two companies. We even don't know who to choose from. There is this vacuum of information. Not everyone can monitor the quality. And the third risk, that without market consultations, majority of companies that are ready for tenders are afraid of being statists in some procedures that will not let them win this tender, and in some cases these are the risks that have to be taken into account. By the way, I would like to read out the message from Zoom. I would like to remind you that we have this hybrid event, that we have viewers online as well. And here with this, I would like to give the floor to Ivan for final remarks. So, in Zoom, it is written, excuse me, but it just proves the low quality of our laws if everyone can interpret them the way they want to. Do not put this responsibility on the users of state services. Amazing. Now I actually wanted to mention this. Thank you, this person who wrote this, because there was this whole slide. Alexandra had this first slide about her presentation, that there are lots of bodies that are cooperating in construction industry. And that's a problem, because only for 2025, the volumes in public procurement, it's top one now. And I think that it will not be able to remain on the same levels. The previous year, sphere of construction was in top 3 because, well, electricity, gas and so on, but still it's a great amount of money. I used to say that a sphere of public procurement unites all the spheres, because actually procurements are everywhere. I'm dealing with them somehow. It turned out to be like that. But here we have some kind of double combo, that the sphere of procurement, lots of funds, lots of stakeholders, and Alexandra has mentioned that every person has their own interest. Someone wants to have high quality projects, someone
будувати, і
wants to
неважливо за які
just
гроші.
build
Хтось
something,
хоче побудувати
someone wants
дешево, хтось
to
хоче
build
просто
for
заробити,
free,
тому що
someone
це
just wants to
бізнес, він
earn
заробляє
because it's
гроші
business,
апріорі. І от інтереси оцих, а хтось хоче відкрити
and
кримінальне
someone just wants to
провадження,
open
хтось
criminal
хоче відкрити там
case.
якусь там справу і таке
Someone
інше,
wants to
знайти якісь зловживання. І
find some
оцих
kind
всіх
of
людей сфера будівництва
abuse and
якось
so on and so
має
forth.
подружити.
And all these people,
Тому
sphere
мій
of the
посил,
sphere of
по-перше,
construction
дуже
should
важливе обговорення, що ми про нього говоримо.
put
Ми
together
багато з
somehow. And
Олександром
that's why we
дискутували
talked a lot
про
with
будівництво. Так
Alexandra
сталося, що я
about
більше
this
тендерами
construction.
займаюсь,
It
повторююсь.
turns out that I'm dealing
Але
more with
коли ми говоримо про
it happens
сферу
so that I'm dealing more
будівництва,
with
ну тут же
standards,
ж там
but if we
ходять
talk about the
легенди
sphere of
всякі про
construction, there
якісь
are
там
legends, there are
відкати
myths around
30%,
that,
і
about
вже
some
там
kind of
45
30% of
називають, да,
payment
і,
and
ну, питання,
45
де ж
and
це береться?
bribes.
Ну
So
все
they
ж
have the
класно,
question,
закони
where do you get
ідеальні,
it
все має
from? Everything is
працювати, а от
amazing,
воно чомусь не
laws are
працює.
ideal, but
І
somehow
тобто наша
it's not
ключова
working.
задача за результатами
And
цього
our
обговорення
main key
все-таки
task based on the
подумати
result
над
of
тим,
this
як
discussion
спробувати
to
зробити
think
так, щоб
how
хоча б
to
ці точкові проблеми
make
почати вирішувати.
this
Тому
how
що
to try at least to solve
саме
such
собою
problems,
воно не
because
вирішиться. Ну, ми можемо
it's not
сказати,
going
що
to solve
публічні
on its own.
закупівлі
We can say that
заважають
public
будувати. Ну, давайте
procurements
відмінимо
can
публічні закупівлі. Це вирішить проблему? Не
prevent
вирішить.
building,
Ми
whether
говоримо,
construction, whether
що
it's going to solve
там
this
проблеми
problem.
з
No.
ціноутворенням. Ну, давайте скасуємо ціноутворення, давайте
We
буде одна строчка в кошторисі, вартість
can
будівництва
have
школи 100
1
мільярдів гривень.
billion
Ну, хай так буде.
hryvnias, only one
Нормально ж,
line, for example,
нормально.
building of the school,
Рішення?
1 billion
Ну,
hryvnias. That's
начебто
it,
не
without
зовсім.
details.
Ми говоримо, що там заробітна
Okay.
плата
Solution?
– це
No.
проблема, і там
We
кожен
say that salary
по-всякому
is a problem
розуміє.
and it can be
І
interpreted in a different way. And
Олександр казав
Alexander,
про те,
yes,
що
Alexander has mentioned
громади,
that
по-моєму, не зовсім розуміють, що вони не
communities do
можуть це
not
обмежувати.
understand that they cannot
Так, вони
limit
не
it.
можуть це
Yes, they
обмежувати, ми
cannot
навіть там
limit it,
дослідження це
they cannot
робили, але
restrict
вони
it.
це
We even
роблять.
had some kind of
І
research,
чи
but they
готові
still
вони
do that. And
усвідомити,
whether they are
було
ready
питання
to
Олександра про
understand.
те, що не потрібно
There was this question from Alexander that we don't need
встановлювати
to
верхню межу по заробітним платам в
put
кошторисі.
the top
Не потрібно. Але в мене зустрічне
level.
питання, чи
No.
готовий бізнес
But
до
I
того,
have another
щоб
question, whether
усвідомити, що якщо
business
ми
is
ставимо
ready to
ринкову
understand
заробітну
that
плату,
if
то
we
від цієї
have
ринкової
market
заробітної
salary,
плати
then from
потрібно
this market
платити на
salary
ринкову
we need
зарплату
to pay
відповідні ринкові
market
податки.
salary and market
Тому
taxes.
що,
So
закладаючи ціну 13 тисяч гривень в проект,
to
мені
have this price
здається, от коли
13,000
ми говоримо
hryvnia
про
in the
законодавство, знову
process,
таке, ну
if
воно
we talk
начебто ж нам
about
дозволяє це
legislation,
робити.
it
І всім
kind
так
of lets
зручно.
us do this, and
Так
everyone
зручно і
thinks that
замовнику, так
it's
зручно і бізнесу це
comfortable.
робити,
It's
тому що всі
comfortable
у
for
виграші.
business, it's
А потім
comfortable
приходять
for
правоохоронні
clients, and
контролюючі
then
органи і
law
починають
enforcement
щось там
bodies come,
розказувати, ми
controlling
всі на
bodies
них
come, and they
журимо,
start
що вони
telling
такі
something,
погані.
and we all
Але
say that,
проблема,
well,
вона
they are very
нікуди не
bad, but the
зникає.
problem is
У
not
нас є
going
цікавий
anywhere.
приклад в одному
We have
тендері.
this
Ми
interesting
моніторили один
example
тендер.
in one of the tenders. We were
Ми
monitoring one tender,
відкриваємо документ, в
and
якому
we open the
зазначено, що
document, and
учасник
it
там
is
в
written there
проекті
that
зазначено, що він буде платити
participant will be
ринкову
paying
заробітну плату. Там
market
22,
salary,
здається, тисячі гривень. І потім сам
22,000
же цей
hryvnias, if I'm not
учасник
mistaken. And
підкладає
then
звіт
this
з
very
податкової, де він
participant is
звітує
going
зі
to
своїх
it
робітників, в
puts
якому
there
написано,
this
що всі
report from
працюють
taxes,
800.
and it is written that everyone is working with the
Чи
salary
800. От всі працюють на
7,100.
800, а він каже, в
So
проекті
everyone
закладена
is paying
зарплата
for
22
7,000 or
тисячі. То ми
8,000, but in the
кого
project
ми
it's written
дуримо? У
22,000.
мене
So who
питання,
we are
кого ми
fooling
обманюємо?
here?
Тому моє питання
That's
з
why
точки
my
зору
question, from the
громадськості
point of view of
заключається в
public,
тому, чи маємо ми
public
платити за
audience,
те,
with whether we need to pay
що коштує в X3
for
менше.
something
І я не про
that
X3, не про
costs
БМВ зараз кажу.
3 times less. And I'm
Тому
not
що є купа випадків, коли
and
проекти дійсно завищені
there are
в
lots
якісь
of
рази. І тут
cases where the
Наталя
projects
Вікторівна, ну,
really
як
have
ніхто
higher
точно
prices. And
знає
Natalia
розділення
definitely
інвесторської
knows
договірної
about
ціни.
this
Що там купа
investor
проблем, що
price
там
and
купа
agreement
проблем.
price. There are lots of
І про
problems
ці
in those
проблеми ми
cases.
так от якось
And
просто
we
говоримо, а
kind of
рішення
talk
яке
about
буде?
all these
Давайте
problems, but what will
заборонимо
be the solution
правоохоронним
here?
органам
Let's
перевіряти бізнес.
prevent law enforcement
Ну,
bodies
бо це
from
офіс простих
checking
рішень.
the business, because it's an office of simple
Тому що це так
decisions.
просто щось
Office of
заборонити,
simple
але коли
solutions.
ти
It's so
щось
easy to
забороняєш,
prohibit
завжди є
something, but when
спокуса
you prohibit
до
something, there is
чогось
often
іншого.
this
Тому
temptation to
забороняючи
do
одне,
something else. So
ми відкриваємо на
prohibiting
іншій
one
стороні
thing, we
якісь купа
open
проблем.
lots of
Тому
problems to other sides. So that's why
дискусія дуже важлива. Дякую, що
discussion
всі
is amazing.
зібралися і
Thank
не
you for
побили, не пописали
thank you
один
for
одному.
gathering here and
Я
for not
впевнений, що
hitting
кожен
and
залишиться
biting
при
each other.
своїх
I'm pretty
якихось
sure that we
інтересах,
still
і
all
я
have our own interest in mind, and I am pretty sure that not everyone was fully true, fully sincere. I believe that we need to conduct lots of such meetings, more such meetings, because each sphere has its dark and light sides.
історія з консультантами. Наталя
The story with consultants, Natalia was just leaving at the time. Olana was showing amazing slide, 43 people getting 6.3 billion hryvnias. Well, I'm not against earning money for people, but it's just somehow they were made up. Not all clients are professional. Not all of them understand whether it's needed or not. These people had to help them to create something. They had to help them to conduct a public procurement, to help with lots of documents. And it's okay that they need to pay additionally for them. And sector says that yes, there are problems. But we are all talking about the same thing, but we need to do something with it. We are really happy that there is this task force on pricing. I'm a part of it. It's really very complicated there. So I am actually for having more experts in such discussions. We do not have simple solutions in such discussions. It's just there are no such things. Yes, we have higher prices. Let's not have higher prices. But the question, how to do this? Let's regulate them. Well, okay, we are in a legal country, free prices. What kind of regulation are we talking here about? And if we talk about certain solutions or solving of certain matters, it can become difficult. So I would like to ask all of the experts to join, even if they might not like each other very much. But in this discussion, we might find truth and some solutions. This is really this story that we are living in democratic country, and we can generate some kind of solutions with correct approach and not just simple, fast solutions to prohibit something or to allow something. And we, using this opportunity, we have had here representatives of international partners. And once again, I would like to join the Ministry of Development here concerning electronic system of construction. We all know that USAID closed and they were doing a lot for construction sphere. And we would not like all of this to fall. We would not like all these digital solutions to come to its end. So that's why it's important to support this, to support Ministry of Development in administering of the system, even more so the development of this, but also in institutional problems. We need to regulate the laws here as well, as it was mentioned. Yes, just a few words. I would like to express my gratitude for organizing, because we see here calls for all of partners. Let's have research about problems in construction, in the sphere of construction. We know the problems already. We just need to start working actively on correcting all of this. So I would like to encourage all our experts to look at the side of implementing specific sectors, not at the side of analytics. And we all jointly with public associations have understanding of what we want. We really want to still achieve that, and we are pretty sure that such platforms as a place where we can discuss development. And I would like to express my gratitude to Transparency International for such summing up on the stage of this process. I'm pretty sure that we still will have something in the future, and it will be interesting. I would like to get aside a little bit from what our viewer mentioned. Recently, one of law enforcement bodies asked my colleague actually about engineer consultants. Could you please tell, well, you used to have regulation that had financing of the work of engineer consultant in the context of up to certain percent according to the agreement, and then you introduced changes to the regulation, and it is written that it is not certain percentage, but that it is closing of specific task that he should perform. But maybe it's a corruption component, so that's why I don't know. Or maybe ministry here
Я не знаю, як в такому,
had
в такому
some
сенсі повинно бути
bad
написане законодавче
intentions. And I
регулювання.
don't know how, in this sense, such regulation should be written. Thank you. That's true. But once again, the most important thing here, what this person should do, what added value this person brings. And if people do not understand this, then probably it's a problem, but probably the ministry should tell, should give some advice. And in the context of construction development, we are all talking about projects and so on and so forth. One more important thing in the context of development, the price of reconstructing square meter, for example, in city council. So we are observing when objects are being reconstructed, when you start listing all the expenses that state had for erecting some kind of building, then this number is as high that you can buy a flat on Pecharsky Lipke. But I have the question then, why the state invests such expensive constructions, waiting for many years for this project to be built. Maybe let's think that those people who suffered, we can give them some kind of certificate, because there are city councils that can go the other way. They want to rebuild the objects, the entities. And you see, but the price per square meter, 70,000 hryvnias there. Yes, we discussed it with the one. Now we are talking about the building of social housing, apart from everything else. Not only about this, not only, yes, I'm not talking about that, but if we are talking about this and we need to give people, whether we need on the central level to do something, maybe we need to direct city council to somehow, maybe they need to think that, dear friends, it's okay, but you build it with too much money. You could have given flats to twice as many people for these funds. Once again, everyone wants to go home already, but I still would like to reflect on that. Well, we need to talk more, you know.
Дивіться, це дійсно відновлення і інструменти
Really, recovery and the tools of recovery, that's a different topic for discussion, and it's extremely important. But if to talk about recovery of multi-story buildings, then when in 2022 we were forming solutions that had some kind of fixation effect, monitoring, assessment, everything dealing with this understanding of what should be done by constructors, by builders, what are their actions after the event, after the incident. If event took 2 weeks ago, for example, and National Guard finished its work, militaries finished their work, the mining finished, what should be done afterwards? Because we are talking about private property in majority of cases of physical entities, of public individuals, and what the body of local self-government should do after that, because we talk here about private property, not communal property. We were reviewing several cases, and if to look at this recovery and compensation tool, for example, let me remind you, previous year, Odessa, when first entry of 9-story building was ruined, we were looking at this as a technical solution. What bodies of local self-government can do here, what solutions can be done here for recovery, if it's the first entry or the last entry. But if it's, for example, the third entry of the building that has 8 entries, what should be done in this case? So we are talking here not only about financial logic of the price of square meter, damaged square meter, we are talking about technical existence of building as such, because if it's the third building of 8, third entry of 8 entry building, we're talking about new object, about new facility. We are talking about building of new facility, new from the scratch field, and here they decided to build some new building. If to calculate the price of the cost of 1 square meter will be 100,000, sometimes even more. About recovery, I'm not talking here about recovery. I have certain logic, I have certain understanding that it might be more expensive because we need to reassemble to build something new. So actually it's a new discussion already here, why construction of new objects is so expensive. Because Just because, as they say. Yes, because we're not looking for simple solutions. It's a very important matter, and I hope that Institute of Economic Research will do something similar. Thank you. Dear colleagues, just several words. Laws are terrible. Parliament is to blame. All the reforms are very difficult to pass through Parliament. We have Alexander Goncharenko here. We started as tapas in 2018 with Natalia. You know, in 2019, one of the first laws that was adopted, it was one of the laws we were laughed at. Not many people believed in us. They told that we would not be able to do that. They were writing some articles against us, and we were not really we were not in good informational space, all of us. Today, it's working. Everything is working. Everyone counts anti-corruption effect. There are millions of documents, and no one already even imagined that on Tuesday and on Thursday they need to take the project for documentation, bring it to Kyiv, put it in some boxes, and get permission for projecting. Now we all have electronic offices that everything works there. Not everyone likes it, but it's okay. You cannot satisfy everyone for 100%. But dear friends, if now in 2025 we were adopting this law, then I'm pretty sure, 100% sure that we will not be able to do this. We would be arguing whether it will be office or not office, whether it should have this password or that password. Now we all support it, and even the same representatives of construction market, they say that we are ready to finance it, just continue this digitalization. The same story was when we decided to ruin this Dhabi organization. Everyone was laughing at us. They were saying that we are a little bit crazy because it was impossible to overcome that. Today we have as IACM and everyone working with obtaining permissions in this institute. There is video can have 100,000 views in TikTok, on TikTok, when they say how State Institute works as a real service function. And sometimes you cannot imagine what way they should have overcome for this to happen. Unfortunately, each change is drastic. We see that drastic changes in construction sphere has to be conducted, and it will meet resistance. We see this resistance. We know about this. We understand what interests are included here. But Alexandra, Ivan, let's talk more. Let's talk more often. Sometimes we might disagree, but I'm pretty sure that there are some solutions already have to be discussed. We are now working in the Parliament in our committee with governmental draft law about the basic of housing policy. Now we have 1,916 amendments and lots of ministry before that was working on that for 1.5 years. It was discussed, it had been discussed with everyone, but even now on the platform, on the committee, we discuss it every week. We do not have 100% consensus and agreement. Of course, it will go to session hall. Of course, it will be agreed because it's a Ukraine facility, and there still will be people who will disagree with that and that will tell that, no, it's not right, the legislation is awful. But we got lots of gray hair, but we still move on. And all these changes that we have implemented, their digitalization of the processes and creation of new state institutions working according to new rules. And there's all those things that we were talking about here. It's about pricing. It was already written in Ombudsman report, and everywhere else it will be overcome. But definitely not everyone will be 100% satisfied. Thank you, everyone working in this sphere. It's extremely needed for all of us here today. Thank you. Just to sum up, I would like to mention that I'm extremely grateful to everyone who was here with us and for those who were with us online, and especially to our panelists, because you stayed here longer and you are so active in your discussion. We really have lots of common work. Once again, I understand that research were there, but sometimes we need to open some kind of new layer because certain discussions are conducted in our bubbles, and these bubbles have to be expanded. And this is what I can say about every topic that I have ever dealt with. Am I a specialist in construction? No, and I don't really want to be the specialist, but as a specialist in public finances, for me to understand all these matters that we were talking about, because not only I was working on this research, it was very useful, and I hope that it will be useful for others as well. And I'm really grateful to have here and online donors with us, and construction companies, international companies, NGOs, and we have gathered a big bubble. I'm really grateful to everyone. Let's keep in touch.